Chapter 1083. At this point, what could Han Fei do? Of course, he had to fight. His body was probably in the belly of the mountain now. Even if the mountain collapsed, he wouldn't be crushed to death. However, he had to fight far away and couldn't let it affect this place. Han Fei, who had transformed into a monkey, stepped on the mountain, and a coiled turtle array was imprinted on the mountain. When Han Fei stepped out of the coiled turtle array with the body of an ape, the scene was shocking. An old turtle was lying on the ground. Its shadow was vicissitude, as if it were an old monster that had lived for tens of thousands of years. Han Fei roared and rushed forward. Every step he took on the ground caused the earth to shake and the mountains to shake. The big ape seemed to be surprised. How could its son use the means of a human spirit gatherer? However, it didn't care and was already fighting on the sea. However, at this moment, the sea had already collapsed. Ferocious beasts, human beings, and the Sea Clan, the three parties fought together, and the ground was covered with corpses. Han Fei didn't know if it was because he had become a very strong monkey, but he felt that he was about to explode now. As he jumped, his body directly leaped hundreds of meters into the sky. Han Fei was proficient in rod techniques. After all, he had studied the true solution of rod techniques. However, when Han Fei thought of the true solution of rod techniques, he suddenly felt that those were not the strongest. What made Han Fei realize that the strongest was actually strength, infinite strength, and the power of law that could penetrate through the void. Somehow, there seemed to be a mysterious understanding of rod techniques falling on Han Fei. When Han Fei jumped to the sea, the first thing that came at him was a big lobster. Just the giant pincers broke through the void of 100 meters. Attack! The long rod in Han Fei's hand smashed the void. Before the rod arrived, the waves were separated, the clouds rose, and the flames all enveloped the rod. At this moment, Han Fei couldn't tell how strong he was at all. At present, what he could understand was the power of a wave. However, obviously, the power of this big ape had probably surpassed 100 waves. Han Fei firmly believed that the monkey he was possessing now definitely had the strength of an explorer. Moreover, they might not be ordinary explorers. That sturdy body, that explosive power. In the air, the two pincers were unable to resist at all. They tumbled down and were crushed from head to tail. Clang! Kacha! Bang! The huge lobster's head was smashed into pieces by Han Fei's rod. Fuck, so awesome. Even Han Fei himself was shocked. One could tell that the lobster was extraordinary. It was covered in incomparably thick armor. In the end, it was smashed by his rod. That's not right. There's an armor-breaking profound opening power on the rod. Even Han Fei himself didn't realize that the blow he made with all his strength was so powerful. What staff technique quintessence? Han Fei had long forgotten about it. This thing was simply too awesome. This was the pinnacle of power that he had felt so far. It was so strong that it made his scalp go numb. Moreover, this strike did not end immediately. Wherever the cudgel wave passed, dozens of prawn soldiers and crab generals were crushed. My son, board the ship. Han Fei bared his teeth. What do you mean by my son? If old Han hears this, he'll beat the shit out of you. However, he couldn't expose his identity yet. After all, this big ape was too strong. If it knew that he was not his son, he would be doomed. Han Fei stomped his feet and immediately wanted to jump onto the towering ship. However, as soon as Han Fei jumped into the air, a strong master arrived with an armor. This was an armorist who was full of muscles. In the human base, only such a powerful armorist could stop creatures like the big ape. The other multicolored tiger spread its wings and flew into the sky, but it was also stopped by someone. In any case, the powerful beasts were all stopped. The man in front of Han Fei, with his armor box suspended in the air and two sledgehammers in his hands, looked at Han Fei solemnly. Retreat. This ship is full. The beasts have boarded the ship in other places. The beasts can't be destroyed. Han Fei thought for a moment. Since he was here to fight, he had to fight first, right? If he couldn't beat them, he wouldn't have to get involved in this matter. So Han Fei didn't say a word and smashed down with his cudgel. Clang! The first to appear was a giant turtle with strange patterns on its body. It seemed to be the spiritual beast of the armorist. The turtle's eyes emitted a strange light, causing the void to shake, so that Han Fei's cudgel couldn't smash down. At the same time, the void was torn, and cold lights swept at Han Fei's body, making clanging sounds. Han Fei's fur was cut a little. Maybe because he wasn't used to the ape's fighting style, Han Fei lost the upper hand in the first round. However, what shocked him was that this monkey's physique was ridiculously strong. The void had been torn apart, but the cudgel had only cut the fur on its body. Didn't this mean that this monkey could fight against an explorer-level strong master? The armorist's face became more and more gloomy. At this moment, with a roar, a divine weapon exploded in front of Han Fei. For an expert of this level to make a divine weapon explode, how terrifying would that be? Han Fei was blasted thousands of meters away and crashed into the sea, flattening a big centipede. Han Fei was also enraged. Such a strong body, but this was all he could do. Of course, that was impossible. In his mind, thousands of cudgel shadows suddenly appeared. Did he feel the instinctive fierceness of a monkey? Han Fei's eyes turned red, and he stepped into the air again. But this time, he smashed hundreds of cudgel shadows at once. Even he didn't know what kind of cudgel technique it was. Anyway, he just smashed whatever appeared in his mind. Clang, clang, clang. Clang, clang, clang. Where the turtle's eye was condensed, the void shook as if it was sinking into sand, but Han Fei didn't care. If one cudgel couldn't smash through, he would smash it 10 times. If 10 cudgel couldn't smash through, he would smash it 100 times. Perhaps because Han Fei's moves were too fast, from the perspective of others, Han Fei seemed to be waving a fire stick, smashing it again and again. The more Han Fei smashed, the more excited he felt. This cudgel technique was so strange. Each cudgel was faster and stronger than the previous one, very similar to Zhang Xuanyu's 9-layered waves in Furious Sea. However, the waves he could create were countless times more than Zhang Xuanyu's. The big turtle was smashed by Han Fei so hard that even its head shrank back, and cracks appeared on its shell. And the armorist turned into a giant and tried to resist with his giant hammer. However, after Han Fei smashed it more than 500 times, the armorist finally couldn't stand it anymore. The giant phantom was directly smashed by Han Fei. His bones were broken, blood gushed out wildly, and he was sent flying backward. Only then did Han Fei have a chance to rush to the ship. To rush to the ship, he had to break through the array first. However, before Han Fei broke through the array, he suddenly heard a thunderous roar above the sky. Someone shouted, "Enough, monkey, the road ahead is long, and life and death are uncertain. If the human race survives, the beasts will definitely rise in the future." Huh. The big ape refused and shouted angrily, "If we die, how can we rise? Let the beasts board the ship." Humph. It seemed that the negotiation didn't work out, and then Han Fei saw a scene that he would never forget in this life. He saw a big hand across the sky, covering half of the sky, and the palm print was like a mountain, falling from the sky. The big ape was covered in blood, his hands against the big hand, still trying to struggle. However, it was pressed to the bottom by the big hand. Even Han Fei, the Tiger King, and a one-horned rhinoceros were pressed down by this big hand. Fuck. Han Fei thought, I haven't had fun for 2 minutes yet. I was pressed down as soon as I hit one person. In fact, there seemed to be boundless gravity above the big hand. Several Beast King-level powerhouses were all pressed into the sea. There was a saying called, overwhelming mountains and overturning seas. In the past, Han Fei thought it was a bit exaggerated. But now it seemed that overwhelming mountains and overturning seas was nothing. As soon as this big hand came out, even a complete mountain range could be smashed by him. Boom, boom, boom. At that moment, Han Fei didn't know what he was feeling. He felt like he was a little kid. Then, he was stunned by a slap. When Han Fei came back to his senses, his whole body sank into the depths of the sea sand, and all his bones seemed to have been crushed. Just now, he had arrogantly defeated an explorer. At this moment, he was like a seriously ill patient groaning in a hospital bed, about to die at any time. Han Fei finally came to a conclusion: creatures like the strong were too terrifying. When he hit people just now, he was like old Han. Now, he was pressed down by someone, and he felt that that person was old Han. This kind of subtle psychological experience made Han Fei feel uncomfortable. I'm going to die, am I going to die? Han Fei felt that he really couldn't make it. He was obviously not as strong as the big ape. And that person's power was originally used to deal with the big ape. But now, Han Fei felt that he couldn't move. Countless giant worms from the bottom of the sea rushed towards the wound, trying to drill into his body. Han Fei waited for a long time before he accumulated a little strength and directly killed all these creatures. When Han Fei crawled back to the shore with his level 9 crippled body, he saw that the big ape was also dying, sprawled on the ground after being slapped to the ground. Pressed into the ground, it probably wasn't any better than Han Fei. All of a sudden, Han Fei sensed a fatal crisis. He tried to dodge, but he only had time to make a movement to escape. Puchi! A silver spear directly pierced through his body. Together with the spear, he slid on the ground for thousands of meters and smashed half of a mountain before he finally stopped. Gravel rolled down and pressed on Han Fei's body. Bam! The silver spear exploded. Han Fei, who was about to die, was blown up to the point that half of his body was gone, leaving only a trace of breath. At that moment, Han Fei completely experienced the arrival of death. Han Fei had experienced the smell of death before. For example, he died too quickly with Chun Huangdian and didn't feel anything. For example, when he killed Snowmorn, he still had a bit of confidence. But this time, he didn't know how long it had been. It seemed very long, but it also seemed very short. Han Fei muttered to himself, I haven't even shown my power yet, and I'm already dead? When Han Fei was dying, he felt that his soul was about to be shed. Suddenly, a big hand pushed away the gravel. Half of the big ape's body crawled out of the pit and took a deep look at Han Fei. There was no telling whether he was talking to his son or Han Fei, but he struggled to say, if the beasts don't perish. Yes, the beasts will be better. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1084. Han Fei didn't know when he woke up. Anyway, he felt very tired, very tired. He didn't even see the void steel appear. Han Fei's bones seemed to have fallen apart. At this moment, in a daze, Han Fei didn't know how many divine healing techniques he had cast on himself. Only then did he slowly wake up. When Han Fei woke up, he found that he was pressed in the gravel. A boulder was pressing on his face, almost crushing him into a pancake. Bam! Han Fei struggled and blasted a way out of the gravel. When he climbed out, he found that the scene just now had disappeared without a trace. However, not far in front of him, he saw hundreds of various creatures. There were wolves, pigs, crocodiles, shadow leopards. Anyway, there were a lot of creatures, but these creatures were different from those on the previous battlefield. The bodies of these creatures had long collapsed and were incomplete. At this moment, their eyes were flashing with blue soul fire, and they were trying to kill Han Fei. Wait! Why is the timeline here so chaotic? Han Fei tried to calm himself down. From the moment he dug into the hole and came out, the timeline had changed. When he visualized the elephant's tusk, Han Fei returned to the time when the elephant died in a certain way. The time when he possessed the elephant and the time when he came out of the hole and saw the wolf's corpse should not be in the same timeline. But after he visualized the elephant's tusk, he was chased, so something unknown should have happened. Thus, he was brought into another timeline. If possessing the elephant was a timeline, killing the wolf was another timeline, and being chased was another timeline, then this time should be the same timeline as when he killed the wolf. However, these were not his original timeline. Immediately, Han Fei understood it. In this fog, time was chaotic. But the key now was, how should he return to the normal timeline? However, at this moment, there was no time for Han Fei to think about it. Because these creatures were about to pounce on him. Roar! As a wolf roared, Han Fei grabbed the embroidery needle with one hand. Ha! Why am I grabbing the embroidery needle? Han Fei was unconscious. He was ready to fight, so he naturally grabbed a weapon. However, his first reaction just now was to grab the embroidery needle instead of the blood-drinking knife, which was a little strange. But at this moment, Han Fei didn't care so much. Fight then. Seeing the wolf's sudden attack, Han Fei roared and swung the embroidery needle up. When the embroidery needle was raised, Han Fei felt something different. He seemed to be very good at using sticks. In his mind, a nameless staff technique flashed through his mind. The Great Ape's staff technique? The shadow of the cudgel was like a pillar of fire, striking hundreds and thousands of times in the blink of an eye. Clang, 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 Han Fei wielded the rod violently. At this time, in Han Fei's mind, the memory became clearer and clearer, and he inexplicably felt that the 3,000 stacked mountains could shake the world. Half an hour later, Han Fei cast the divine healing technique on himself with the embroidery needle, covered in wounds. Han Fei murmured, "What a powerful rod technique." To be precise, it was probably 3,000 layered waves. However, it seemed like he could only unleash 100 overlapping waves. Then, he couldn't continue to improve it. Interesting. Is this the terrifying power of the visualization fossil? Han Fei sighed. No wonder the visualization fossil is the most valuable. From the beginning to the end, he felt that it was inexplicable. This 3,000 overlapping waves was really powerful. This would probably raise his level of staff techniques from bronze to master. However, there was still a long way to go before he could be promoted to the king level. Fine, although I don't quite understand, I've inherited your rod technique. If I have a chance to meet the beasts in the future, I'll treat them better. At this moment, Han Fei glanced at the imaginary embroidery needle in his hand and couldn't help but focus. Let's call it the Monkey King 3000 rod technique. Han Fei sighed faintly. That ape was truly ferocious. If it weren't for that big hand, it might really be able to hit it. Of course, at this moment, Han Fei had no time to think about it. If there was no accident, he was still in the Death Valley. It was very likely that this place had once been a battlefield. The number of beasts that died here was uncountable. Could it be that he really had to break through this place in order to get out? What a joke! Han Fei still remembered that there seemed to be a one-horned rhinoceros among the beasts that charged together with him. Don't let me encounter it. Otherwise, someone of that level would have beaten him to death. Han Fei rested for a while, carried the rod, and began to walk in the Death Valley. Along the way, Han Fei could always meet all kinds of land creatures. Some would get up and attack him. Some would have hatred in their eyes. Some wouldn't, because they really only had remains of their bodies left. Fortunately, Han Fei didn't encounter any particularly powerful creatures that could resurrect. Han Fei walked from the Death Valley into a dense jungle. The moment he saw the jungle, Han Fei felt very familiar. He felt that this should mean that he had already left the Death Valley. After running wildly in the forest for a while, the remains of the beasts were gone. There didn't seem to be any special creatures guarding around. About half an hour later, Han Fei suddenly discovered that he seemed to have come to a cliff. Ha! It looks a bit familiar. Han Fei was surprised to find that this was the cliff that he had come to when he possessed the elephant. So, he walked and walked and walked and walked, and then he came here. Han Fei still remembered that there seemed to be a big head at the bottom of this cliff, between the cliffs. He didn't know what kind of head that thing was. It could swallow an elephant in one bite. However, what Han Fei thought of more was the deformed creature that carried a turtle shell, a snake body, and a bun head. After listening carefully for a while, Han Fei didn't find any movement, so he slowly breathed a sigh of relief. He was not an elephant, and those creatures didn't seem to be weak. He'd better not encounter them if he could avoid them. Squeak. Just when Han Fei thought it was okay, he suddenly heard squeaking sounds, which made his heart skip a beat. Little monkey? Han Fei quickly looked in the direction of the sound, only to see that on the cliff far away, a little monkey was eating bananas and hanging upside down on a tree vine. Han Fei was shocked. Is this little monkey the little monkey I just met? Although this little monkey seemed to be quite bad, it didn't seem to like fighting. Although the path was dangerous, even if he met the Tiger King again, so what? If he could meet the Tiger King, it meant that he had already left the Death Valley. Immediately, Han Fei spread the phantom glass wings and flew directly to the opposite side. In this place, it was not really flying, but just flopping. However, in short, it was much better than walking. Han Fei didn't want to jump over. What if another head popped out halfway and ate him? Wouldn't that be the end of him? When the little monkey saw Han Fei coming, he immediately threw the banana away in a panic, pulled a vine on the cliff, and jumped down the cliff. Monkey, don't run. We are relatives. Han Fei plunged headfirst into the clouds and chased after the little monkey. However, although the monkey didn't like fighting, it ran really fast as if this was its back garden. This cliff was about 7 or 8 kilometers high. Han Fei chased and chased, only to find that the little monkey had disappeared at some point. Han Fei landed at the bottom of the valley and his heart suddenly sank. This was still the Death Valley. Yes, he saw a large number of monkey corpses, like mummies. However, many monkeys were crawling on the ground. Some of them even died while they were sitting upright. There was also a group of monkeys, arm in arm, standing in a circle, motionless. No one knew how long they had been dead. Han Fei swallowed and couldn't help but tentatively say, "Brother monkey. Look at me, I just fought side by side with your ancestor. I look like a good person. Can you send me out?" However, there was no sound. The little monkey seemed to have disappeared. Han Fei could only bite the bullet and walk forward along the bottom of the valley. Fortunately, these monkeys didn't intend to resurrect, which made Han Fei feel a lot relieved. But the more he walked, the more Han Fei felt something was wrong. Because everything here was more like a place suitable for living. There were even stone tables here. There were monkeys playing pitch-pot games, and even some wine jars. Han Fei specially ran to the wine jars to see if there was any wine in them. Didn't they say that there was some monkey wine to strengthen the body? What if there were some rare treasures here? Unfortunately, the jar was empty. Thinking about it, it might be true. This was just a soul realm. Although this place might really exist, it was definitely not in the ideal palace. The ideal palace was just an island. How could it accommodate the 7 soul realms? Therefore, this should be a projection of a certain place, existing in the form of a soul space. After walking for a while, Han Fei suddenly saw a place that looked like a throne. In fact, it was a huge stone chair. There were rock roads around it, and various lines were carved on the ground. On the side of the stone chair, Han Fei could vaguely see the cliff wall. There seemed to be a pattern there. When Han Fei walked there, he found that the figure of a big ape was carved on the cliff wall. There were all kinds of stick figures on it. Wow! There must be treasures under the cliff. Trick, I admire you. Han Fei had discovered that the stick technique was the set of Monkey King 3000 strikes that he had learned. However, he didn't want to learn stick techniques now, but to find a way out. Han Fei stood in front of the cliff and looked at it for a while. Suddenly, he found that the little monkey was sitting not far from him. However, at this moment, the little monkey had a stick in its hand and was looking at him. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. Monkey! If you're so disgraceful, why are you carrying a stick? Squeak! The little monkey's body suddenly swelled, and its body mutated into an ape the size of 2 people. Son of a bitch, I knew it wouldn't be so easy to get out. Chapter 1085. Unlike Han Fei, although Luo Xiaobai and the others had also dug out problems, they hadn't come to the Death Valley yet. Zhang Xuanyu even stopped digging, and when he came back, he found that Han Fei and the others were gone. He was dumbfounded. I just ran next door for a while. Where are they? Curious, Zhang Xuanyu found the hole dug by Han Fei and ran in. As a result, as soon as he walked out, oh my god. The hole behind him was also gone. As a result, all 5 of them, including Zhang Xuanyu, had dug themselves out. At this moment, Luo Xiaobai was tossing and turning on a big tree, surrounded by hundreds of spiritual plants, facing the danger from the tree. Yes, unlike Han Fei, Luo Xiaobai found herself on a tree after coming out. This tree was so big that Luo Xiaobai felt that she was lost. Besides, she had lost the ability to walk through spiritual plants. Fortunately, the death substitution technique could still be used. Otherwise, Luo Xiaobai felt that she would be in trouble. However, Luo Xiaobai's thinking was clearer than Han Fei's. At this moment, she was guarding the end of a huge branch, frowning. Is it a coincidence that such a huge spiritual plant is here? Luo Xiaobai generally didn't believe in coincidences. She was a manipulator and happened to come to a huge spiritual plant. And on this big tree, on the surface of the bark, there were all kinds of spiritual plants. Also, there were many flying birds living in the sky, as well as a large number of insects and snakes. The reason why Luo Xiaobai felt that she had a slim chance of survival was that these birds were too terrifying. Insects were nothing to her. She was a manipulator, and a very strong one at that. Although snakes were a bit tricky to fight, she had many means of attack. Even if she didn't have a strong fighting style like Han Fei and the others, spiritual plants were weapons. In the world of spiritual plants, she had no reason to lose to the creatures living on spiritual plants. However, birds were different. He had very little experience fighting bird-type creatures. At this moment, what was chasing Luo Xiaobai was a kind of flying creature. Luo Xiaobai felt that they were birds. These creatures had a pair of transparent wings, fluff on their bodies, a steel needle in their mouth, and a tail that was split into 3. If Han Fei were here, he would have been shocked. Damn it, do all the mosquitoes in this world look like this? Of course, it couldn't be a mosquito, but it looked like one. It looked like a bee, except that it had a needle on its mouth. The 3 tails were like whips that could pierce through the void. Most of the spiritual plants summoned by Luo Xiaobai's grand spirit summoning art were sucked dry by the 3 tails. This made her speechless. But fortunately, Luo Xiaobai did gain something. She visualized the claws of a terrifying spider. At this moment, as his figure moved, thousands of threads and tens of thousands of movements could be seen. In the void, it only appeared faintly before turning into nothingness. However, those mosquito-like fellows couldn't see it. Therefore, when a large group of mosquitoes chased after them, many of them were shredded by the threads hidden in the void. Vine explosion. Luo Xiaobai stepped on vines and jumped among the branches with invisible threads as hooks. She wanted to reach the top. Although there seemed to be some other creatures there. Lu Renquan came to an orchard. Logically speaking, this should be something to be happy about. However, what if these fruits grew bigger than humans? What if these fruits could attack people? What if there were bugs bigger than humans here? Roar! Lu Renquan was also running wildly, thinking that a group of fruits was following him. Those fruits actually opened their big mouths, full of steel teeth, and there was mucus between their teeth. In prehistoric times, there might not only be beasts, but also strange trees. There might also be some things that people didn't understand at all. At this moment, Lu Renquan and the group of fruits chasing him behind him were like a game of Pac-Man, funny and strange. The armor box and the blade storm came out in full force, attacking in all directions. Because not only were there fruits chasing behind him, but there might also be some strange roots like man-eating flowers sticking out of his head. There was also the fruit that could shoot poisonous thorns. If it was just fruits, they might not be very strong. At most, their characteristics were a little abnormal. However, there were all kinds of strange things in the boundless world. This was not strange. But the bugs here were not so easy to deal with. The human-faced half-winged beetles often lay on some spiritual plants and cast illusions. If it weren't for the fact that Lu Renkuang's soul had become stronger after the monster plant soul realm and the blue sea soul realm, and he had things like mint leaves, he would have been bewitched by them. Moreover, those bugs could even scream, which pierced his soul, making Lu Renkuang extremely annoyed. Otherwise, why would Lu Renkuang and the bugs always have some unspeakable opportunities? Here, the most terrifying thing was not those illusionary bugs. The main thing was that there were a lot of mantises here. If Lu Renkuang didn't activate ultimate defense, he might have been chopped by them. It's too dangerous, too dangerous. I want to go home. And just when Lu Renkuang thought that he had run out of the orchard and reached the mountain peaks ahead, he saw a group of broken corpses looking at him leisurely. Lu Renkuang recognized those corpses. Weren't those giants? He had seen them on the murals in the thousand-star proving ground. Oh my God, one of the giants had lost half of its head. There was also a giant with holes all over his body. At this moment, he seemed to be about to attack. Roar. Deep blue roar. Zhang Xuanyu's situation was not much better. He came to a spider jungle full of spider webs. In the sea, there were also sea spiders, and there were many of them. However, those spiders rarely appeared at the same time, let alone several or dozens of them at once. If you insisted that spiders were similar to crabs, you had to be careless. At least, crabs were edible, but few people ate spiders. At this moment, Zhang Xuanyu was facing a group of huntsman spiders. These spiders were generally larger, with longer and sharper feet. At this moment, Zhang Xuanyu was not only facing the danger of spider silk, but also the endless, sharp, spear-like spider feet. Clang, clang, clang. Clang, clang, clang. Soul explosion. Zhang Xuanyu had already moved like a phantom, and the long rod in his hand struck out layers of waves. As a fishing master who dared to cross the sea, Zhang Xuanyu was quite bold. To some extent, he was even comparable to Han Fei. In terms of combat experience, Zhang Xuanyu was the best except for Han Fei. But he was good at one-on-one battles, not group battles. When a large number of spider feet plunged down, accompanied by spider silk and venom, Zhang Xuanyu was in a difficult situation. He fused with the bloodthirsty shark to draw the enemy's blood. He pierced with the power of his soul to protect himself. He used the Trinity body as bait to divert the spider's attack. Zhang Xuanyu tried his best to escape from this damn place first. Covered with wounds, Zhang Xuanyu had just escaped from the tiger's mouth, only to enter the wolf's den again. A giant spider was giving birth. A large group of small spiders chased him, making his scalp go numb. He didn't dare to think about what he would do if they caught up with him. Among all of them, only Li Luoluo's situation was the most normal. Li Luoluo also appeared in a forest. However, that was just a normal spirit plant forest. What appeared were some creatures that he had never seen before, but were still normal. La la la, Li Luoluo was still humming a tune because along the way, countless creatures had been made into plant specimens by her. There is something wrong with the timeline here. How do I get out? In the absence of Han Fei and the others, Li Luoluo's body swelled and turned into a nine-eyed spider. If Han Fei and the others were here, they would have been shocked. The nine-eyed spider was crawling quickly in the forest, thousands of insects following him, like a mighty army of insects. Many creatures even chose to escape when they saw her. Only the corpses of those creatures that had lost consciousness would still rush up in groups. Everyone's encounters were different. The prehistoric world was only a corner of it, and it was impossible to see the whole picture. At this moment, Han Fei didn't know how long he had been fighting with the little monkey. Anyway, he had fought it more than 200 times. He tried to use the void lines, but this ape had the power to protect its soul, and the void lines couldn't catch it. And what made Han Fei most speechless was that this ape's physique was unexpectedly not weaker than his. Han Fei was appalled by this. I admit that I'm no match for the big ape. After all, I'm stronger than him. However, a little monkey that had transformed into an ape had a physique that was so strong that it was able to exchange punches with him. This shocked Han Fei. Of course, in terms of footwork and saber techniques, the little monkey was at a disadvantage. However, while others used sticks, this little monkey could also use the Monkey King 3000 strikes. And its control was much better than Han Fei's. After 100 strikes, Han Fei found that it was quite difficult to increase the power and speed of each strike. However, this little monkey was able to unleash 300 shadows of the rod. Han Fei didn't know how many times he had been blasted away. Besides, this little monkey had the intention to kill him. Han Fei could clearly feel it. If he was beaten to death, he might really be dead. Of course, with Han Fei's physique, it was extremely difficult for the little ape to kill him. Han Fei was like an indestructible cockroach. Not only did his combat power not decrease at all, but even his stick techniques were slowly improving. Ha! It's really a place for training. There were many timelines in the prehistoric Soul Realm. However, Han Fei felt that he had discovered something here. This place had been destroyed in prehistoric times. However, the prehistoric creatures were not willing to give up. Just like the big ape said that Han Fei should treat the orcs well, besides, Han Fei thought that he had discovered the secret of this soul realm. That was the fall of the orcs and the complicated relationship between them and human beings. Han Fei felt that perhaps in the future, the orcs might be a race that he could make friends with. Chapter 1086. The horror of the Death Valley was not that it was really dangerous, but that it was very difficult for those who came in to get out. Whether it was possessing an elephant or an ape, it was just an experience in the end. The chaotic timeline brought people's souls into a certain mysterious time node. Or in a fantasy that seemed very real. However, rules couldn't be meaningless. The reason why it wanted people to comprehend something or other must be because of some reason. According to the usual routine of the ideal palace, whether it was the monster plant soul realm, the undead soul realm, or the blue sea soul realm, they all had extremely fast and terrifying experience for people. At least, if there was no problem with their talent, as long as they didn't die, these people would inevitably grow rapidly. Even if they couldn't reach the end of each soul realm, the chances of humans cultivated in this way to become strong were greatly increased. It was the same in this prehistoric soul realm. Although he hadn't visualized many visualization fossils yet, the ones he felt were almost the strongest. Even if there were better visualization fossils in this prehistoric soul realm, there probably wouldn't be many. At this moment, Han Fei had been fighting with this ape for 3 days and fought countless times. In terms of combat strength, Han Fei and this monkey were evenly matched. In terms of means, Han Fei had more tricks. The problem was that every time Han Fei used fancy means, the opposite ape would go crazy and its strength would increase a lot. As a result, Han Fei could only fight with this stick with the Monkey King 3000 strikes. Of course, there were times when they didn't fight. For example, now Han Fei used the Monkey King 3000 strikes and condensed arrays on the stick. Finally, he beat the monkey away for the first time. This time, he won. Han Fei sat on the ground and gasped. Monkey! I know you want to help me practice stick techniques. But can you not always think of killing me? If it were someone else, they would have been beaten to death by you. Hiss hiss, the ape didn't seem to understand what Han Fei was saying. It bared its teeth and looked fierce. However, it didn't immediately attack again. Instead, it stretched out its hand, grabbed a banana, and began to peel it and eat it. Han Fei sneered, grabbed a jar of wine from the void, and drank a few mouthfuls. Normally, Han Fei would definitely catch some food. But recently, after fighting, he really wanted to drink. The monkey bared its teeth and actually grabbed a wine jar from the void and started to gulp down the wine. Thus, the man and the monkey sat opposite each other, 1,000 meters apart, drinking their own wine. When he finished a jar of wine, the monkey suddenly stood up. Han Fei thought they were going to fight again. However, the monkey started to hit its own chest with its fists. Ha! So what if your chest muscles are big? Han Fei raised his rod and was ready to fight again, but surprisingly, the monkey didn't attack him, which made Han Fei quite curious. You're not fighting anymore. Then, Han Fei saw the monkey dance with joy. Slowly, there was a slight change in the air, and a blurry figure of a giant ape slowly appeared. Han Fei knew the ape. Didn't that look like a big ape? The illusion dissipated upon contact. A ball of fire appeared in the eyes of the monkey and spread outwards. The monkey's body seemed to be unable to bear this wisp of illusion. At this moment, its whole body was trembling, and its skin began to crack. A heavy, hoarse, and deep voice came out. No one knew if it was talking to Han Fei. The Beast King. The day of return. The time of horror. The East. The sea shall not cross, Bam. After saying this, in Han Fei's astonished gaze, the monkey suddenly exploded. Hum. The void steel emerged, and Han Fei's name was directly branded at the 23rd place. Han Fei wasn't surprised by this ranking. Although the experience this time was extremely bizarre, there weren't that many real battles. The disordered timeline wouldn't obliterate the souls of outsiders. The main dangers Han Fei faced were the corpses of the Death Valley itself and the little monkey who seemed to be an examiner. Han Fei frowned. The day of Beast King's return, the time of horror. The East is literally what it means. The sea shall not cross. Can't you just say it all at once? Han Fei murmured and thought for a moment. What level is the Beast King? The last sentence was that there was something in the East. Or was it referring to something else? Han Fei's brain was spinning fast. If the big ape knew something, why didn't it say it when the timeline was disordered? Or, in fact, when the little ape he possessed died, something else happened that he didn't know? Unfortunately, the information he knew was too little. The only thing he could do was to remember this information. The Beast King's return would bring great horror. When Han Fei came back to his senses, he suddenly found that he was standing in the misty valley, and there was no cliff. I'm out. In another timeline, Luo Xiaobai was half paralyzed on the ground, covered in blood. In front of her, a creature with a goat's head, a human body, and a pair of wings was nailed to the top of a giant tree by 9 branches. All below the king are ants. All living beings are sacrifices. No one can escape. Above the giant tree, in the void, there seemed to be an ethereal voice, constantly repeating this sentence. In Lu Renkuang's timeline, this guy had already gone crazy. Its whole body was crimson, and even its hair color had turned fiery red. In front of him, there was only emptiness and nothingness. The sky-swallowing technique was frantically tearing the nothingness as if it was eating something. Around Lu Renkuang, there were many remains of giants, but they seemed to have been dead for a long time. A demonic voice echoed. In the 100,000 years behind me, I'm afraid no one dares to kill a god. Ha ha ha, the laughter was sharp, horrifying, and crazy. Compared with the 3 of them, Zhang Xuanyu's experience was different from others and extremely special. After Zhang Xuanyu escaped from the territory of the spiders, he happened to find a human skeleton. At this moment, he was in a disordered timeline, possessing an unknown person. That person stood proudly in the void, and the spear in his hand shot out again and again, piercing the sky. Every time he attacked, a dark hole would always be pierced in the sky, as if he had poked a big hole in the sky. Mortals can also open the gate of heaven. My fate is in my own hands. This sentence kept appearing in Zhang Xuanyu's mind. The possessed person seemed to know that this path was his path and his ultimate will. Li Luoluo was sitting on the edge of the cliff. Under the cliff, the waves were crashing, and there was an endless sea in front of her. Li Luolua was sitting alone, staring into the distance, with her hands on the ground, like a lonely little girl. Li Luolua's eyes were a little lonely. There was no fancy color on her face, and she looked like a quite quiet little girl. She said to herself, "It turns out that they are all dead. But I can't remember when I go out. What do you think I should do?" "Kiki." Li Luolua's expression changed, and the corners of her mouth curled up slightly, revealing 2 small dimples. "I remember." Han Fei didn't know whether he should continue to walk deeper into the mountain range. He returned to the valley where the time was disordered at the beginning, and the hole he dug was still there. However, Luo Xiaobai and the others were no longer there. He wondered if they were the same as him. He fell into an inexplicable time turbulence. He waited for a day and a night. The first to come out was Luo Xiaobai. However, she was in an extremely bad state. She was covered with bruises and looked extremely weak. Han Fei hurriedly asked, "What happened?" As he spoke, he threw the divine healing technique at Luo Xiaobai. Han Fei also took out a soul fruit and gave it to Luo Xiaobai. Luo Xiaobai was relieved to see Han Fei. "Well, there's something wrong with the time." Luo Xiaobai didn't hide what she saw. When Han Fei heard the sentence, "All under the king are ants," he couldn't help but feel a little horrified. In his opinion, the Age of Doom was definitely not as simple as the sea sweeping the earth. In particular, Han Fei's scalp went numb when he heard the sentence, "All living beings are sacrifices." After experiencing the heavenly desolate city, the undying soul realm, and this time, the prehistoric soul realm, Han Fei realized that the number of dead creatures in that era was probably beyond his imagination. Could it be that a simple phrase like, "the sea sweeps across the land," could be used as a perfunctory answer? The third to come out was Li Luoluo. However, when Li Luoluo saw Han Fei, she immediately smiled sweetly. "Brother, sister." Puff. Han Fei and Luo Xiaobai looked at each other. "Li Kiki?" Han Fei tried to ask Li Kiki something. The result was obviously that she didn't know anything. What could you ask an 8-year-old child? However, Luo Xiaobai said to him via voice transmission, "Can Li Kiki walk out of the timeline alone?" Han Fei was slightly startled and didn't say anything. "Be careful in the future." Han Fei also expressed doubts in his heart. He hadn't seen Li Kiki fight. He even felt that Li Kiki shouldn't be able to fight. However, Luo Xiaobai reminded him, "Can an 8-year-old girl really walk out of the turbulence of time?" Suddenly, a hole appeared in the sky. A spear light flashed in the sky, and the sharpness of the spear was extremely strong. It was as if his body would be pierced if he was touched by that aura. Zhang Xuanyu's figure appeared. However, the surface of his body had long been tattered, and the terrifying sharpness had also been restrained. After Zhang Xuanyu landed, he chuckled. "I've benefited a lot from my narrow escape." "Huh, where's the fatty?" Bam! A mountain exploded, and a shadowy big mouth appeared. It was the sky-swallowing technique that Lu Rinquang had recently comprehended. Han Fei said, "Quang Quang, what are you doing?" "Huh." The big mouth bit at Han Fei. Everyone's expression changed. Because Lu Rinquang was full of killing intent at this moment. Chapter 1087. They had never expected that Lu Rinquang would go crazy. Although this guy's name had the word crazy in it, under normal circumstances, it was not a problem to call him Lu Renwas. Since the first time they met, Lu Rinquang had never lost control and went crazy. Since he went crazy this time, it meant that what Lu Rinquang encountered was probably very terrible. Luo Xiaobai shouted, "Hold him down." Vines swept through the ground, the void, and even a huge flower wrapped around him. However, Lu Rinquang pressed his armor box, and the storm of wind blades was much faster and more powerful. Luo Xiaobai's spiritual plants were torn into pieces. Because they were on the same side, Luo Xiaobai couldn't really fight with all her strength. She could only count on Han Fei and Zhang Xuanyu to suppress them. Zhang Xuanyu roared, and his soul power rippled and fell on Lu Renkuang. Wake up! Han Fei's behavior was even more violent. The embroidery needle shot out in an instant, and her whole body directly crashed into the blade's storm, ignoring those violent sharp blades. However, the big mouth still wanted to bite Han Fei, but Han Fei stepped on the ground and the coiled turtle array appeared, and the golden giant clasped the big mouth with both hands. Demonic blade. Han Fei's pupils slightly constricted. This guy made the void tremble, and the true martial devil knife slashed at Han Fei. Kacha! The coiled turtle array was smashed by 2 slashes, and Han Fei launched the Monkey King 3000 strikes, which was extremely fast and violent. Anyway, Lu Renkuang's physique was not weak at all. Since she couldn't wake him up, she might as well smash him until he woke up. Bang bang bang. Under Zhang Xuanyu's shocked gaze, Han Fei hit Lu Renkuang more than 200 times in a row in a variety of postures, smashing half of the hill, and finally knocking him out. Who? Han Fei took a breath. This fatty is really hard to beat when he goes crazy. After a long while, Lu Renkuang woke up and mumbled to himself, ouch, ouch, ouch. Why do I feel like I've been beaten? Luo Xiaobai asked, what happened to you? Han Fei quickly cast the divine healing technique on him. He didn't throw it just now because he was afraid that Lu Renkuang would go crazy again. Now that he had woken up, he threw it at him. Luo Xiaobai said telepathically, if there's anything important, tell us in private, not in front of Li Luoluo. Lu Renkuang's hands slightly shivered, and he said expressionlessly, ouch, you scared me. You guys don't know that I'm being chased by a bunch of fruits. Yes, fruits. They're bigger than humans, and they have mouths, all kinds of things. And bugs, I hate bugs, I hate bugs. Zhang Xuanyu said, sigh. Are you scared out of your wits? Fruits eat people. Lu Renkuang crawled out. Of course. It was exceptionally ferocious. I also saw an incomparably huge fruit. I think I was poisoned, and then I don't remember anything. With that said, Lu Renkuang winked at the 3 of them with Li Luoluo on his back. Li Kiki said adorably, Brother Fatty, you are so pitiful. Lu Renkuang stiffened and looked at Li Luoluo in shock. Kiki? Han Fei looked at Luo Xiaobai. Let's go and explore the prehistoric soul realm. Let's see if we can explore all 7 soul realms. Han Fei's idea was actually very simple. He even felt that he might have guessed why those people on the heavenly talent list didn't compete for rankings. Because the information obtained from a single soul realm was too little, but different soul realms seemed to be able to bring improvement to people. Therefore, in this kind of situation, most people wouldn't choose a dead-end path and would insist on walking it to the end. At this moment, Han Fei had the same idea. He had obtained a lot of information from the prehistoric soul realm, but for now, if he was only ranked 23rd, it would be more difficult to enter the top 10 or the top 3. After all, he and the others had already broken through the 3 soul realms. Which last part of the spirit realm was easy to walk. Although he was forced to use the Demon King's contract and didn't have a chance to carefully experience the 3 demon plants in the demon plant soul realm. But it wasn't easy. In Han Fei's opinion, the battles in the Undying Soul Realm and the Graveyard of the Homeless shouldn't be passed by humans at all. The Blue Sea Soul Realm was even more amazing as an ancient black dragon appeared. God knew what kind of creature would appear in the end in this prehistoric soul realm. He was not afraid. The existence of the soul realm was mainly to help humans gain experience and accelerate their growth. Indeed, he could gain more growth from the next 3 secret realms. At that time, if he went back to the prehistoric soul realm, the result might be better. Luo Xiaobai thought for a while and agreed. Okay. Let's go to the other soul realms first. However, if nothing unexpected happens, we must be careful in the War Soul Realm. The 6th and 7th soul realms are extremely mysterious. If the big clans want to take action, then the 5th soul realm may be their best opportunity. Han Fei nodded. Zhang Xuanyu grinned. Hey, I'd like to see what the big clans can do. Lu Renquang said, we can fight. Li Kiki blinked her eyes. Are we going to fight? Everyone was stunned. Han Fei and the others were speechless. By the way, Li Kiki was still an 8-year-old child. Was he going to take her to the War Soul realm? However, Li Luolua was not weak. Without her, his side would indeed lack a fighting force. Luo Xiaobai frowned and said, Kiki, can you ask Li Luoluo to come out? Li Kiki suddenly blinked her big eyes and said aggrievedly, Luoluo is asleep. Everyone was taken aback. Li Luoluo fell asleep. Zhang Xuanyu immediately said, well, Kiki. We have something important to do now. Luoluo is asleep. Where is Li Kuang? Can you ask him to come out? Li Kiki pouted. Oh. Li Kiki closed her eyes gloomily. After a pause of more than 10 minutes, Li Luolua's eyes suddenly opened, full of fanaticism. Ha ha ha. I heard you were looking for me. Like I said, I, Li Kuang, am the one who is most needed. Brothers, why did you call me? Ah. The faces of Zhang Xuanyu and the others stiffened. She came out too fast. Luo Xiaobai said, there must be something wrong with Li Kiki. She can control the personality change at will. Since she can control it, she can suppress it. Otherwise, according to Li Kuang's character, I'm afraid he will come out by himself. Hearing Luo Xiaobai's words, Han Fei looked at Li Kuang with a smile and said, Brother Kuang, we're going to do something big. Are you interested? Li Kuang was overjoyed and patted Han Fei heavily. Of course. I'm good at fighting. Since Li Kuang had come out, no matter whether there was a problem or not, his combat power would increase, which was better than an 8-year-old Li Kiki, right? The outside world. Before the prehistoric Soul Realm, the changes on the steel attracted many people's attention. After all, Han Fei's performance in the first 3 Soul Realms was really eye-catching. Therefore, many people were relieved that Han Fei stopped at the 23rd place. Although he was still very strong, as long as he didn't enter the top 3, it meant that Han Fei was not as strong as the strongest heavenly talent in history. After all, when Han Fei went in, he asked Tang Yen and Li Daxian about it. At that time, everyone thought that Han Fei wanted to take their places. Those who paid attention to the list had high expectations. Now, the result of this ranking was much more reassuring. However, this time, to everyone's surprise, unexpectedly, all 5 members of the Thug Academy were on the list. And their rankings were not low. Especially, on the way back. Lu Renquang avoided Li Kuang and said to Han Fei and the others via voice transmission, if I say I saw the corpse of a king, do you believe me? At that moment, Han Fei and the others were shocked. Although it was abnormal, Li Kuang didn't care. This also made Han Fei and the others slightly relieved. Han Fei responded, don't panic, calm down. No. Fatty, are you sure it's a king? Lu Renquang responded, it should be. He seemed to say something to me in the end. It's just that I didn't seem to be in a good state of mind at that time. I don't remember it clearly. It seems to be slaying a god or something. Zhang Xuanyu rolled his eyes and responded, Fatty, don't fool me. Are you sure it's slaying a god? Slaying what god? However, Han Fei and Luo Xiaobai were lost in thought. This kind of thing didn't seem impossible. If Han Fei hadn't seen that big hand, it wouldn't have been a big deal. But he had seen it and was beaten by it. Oh, no, to be precise, the ape he possessed wasn't even qualified to be beaten by it. It was just a simple press, and in the end, he lost most of his life. Luo Xiaobai thought of the saying, all are ants under the king. It didn't seem impossible to think of slaying a god as slaying a king. After all, in the eyes of mortals, what was the difference between a king and a god? Han Fei couldn't help asking, you. What did you see in the timeline? Zhang Xuanyu said, I possessed a person and practiced a peerless spear technique. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. How peerless? Zhang Xuanyu chuckled. Shattering the void and opening the gate of heaven. Luo Xiaobai said in surprise, so, you got a combat skill? Zhang Xuanyu thought for a while. It's not a combat skill, but a path. The path I opened up is very compatible with my own path. I have a hunch that once I become a law enforcer, I might be very strong. The few of them clicked their tongues. They didn't know if Zhang Xuanyu was bragging. However, if he said he would be strong, then he would be strong. Zhang Xuanyu asked, Fei Fei, what did you encounter? Han Fei thought for a while. That scene would probably shock them to the core if they were to hear it. So Han Fei changed his words. I experienced the power of an explorer. Chapter 1088. For the first time, Han Fei and the others didn't mention their rankings. It seemed that everyone maintained a tacit understanding. When the five of them appeared outside the prehistoric soul realm, they immediately set their sights on the stone tablet. Han Fei exclaimed, so high. Zhang Xuanyu was stunned. What? My ranking is so low. Lu Renquang said in a daze, is there a mistake? Li Kuang smiled and said, what's this stone tablet for? Why am I only ranked 99th? Han Fei looked at Lu Renquang speechlessly. After going crazy for a while, this guy actually inexplicably ranked 12th. This number really made him feel dumbfounded. Han Fei had thought that what he had experienced was already bizarre enough. Big apes. A heaven-covering hand. Which of the gigantic divine boats wouldn't make one's heart flutter? However, he was only ranked 23rd, God knew what Lu Renquang had experienced. He was actually ranked 12th. That's not all. Didn't Zhang Xuanyu say that he only comprehended one path? He just possessed a strong man. Han Fei was now wondering who Zhang Xuanyu had possessed. He was ranked 21st, 2 places higher than him. On the other hand, Luo Xiaobai was ranked 21st, Han Fei felt that Luo Xiaobai's experience should be similar to his. As a result, Luo Xiaobai ranked 37th, Luo Xiaobai immediately thought, Zhang Xuanyu's experience is definitely not simple. Lu Renquang's experience is probably even more bizarre than mine. And Luo Xiaobai's experience may be safer in comparison. However, when Luo Xiaobai came out of the timeline, she was seriously injured and didn't seem to be very simple. In this way, it could only mean that what Lu Renquang and Zhang Xuanyu encountered must be more complicated and weird than he thought. As for Li Luoluo, he directly ignored her. On this side, as soon as Han Fei and the others came out, they heard someone rushing over and shouting, I'm here, I'm here. Han Fei looked at a short man and couldn't help but ask in surprise, who are you? The man said, Wang Santai. I'm Wang Santai. I have intelligence. Wang Santai had made up his mind. He had the mentality of eating from a rich family. Since they were so powerful, they must have obtained a lot of soul bones in the prehistoric soul realm. Besides, he had done business with Han Fei several times. Although he was told that the Thug Academy was very violent, he didn't feel too bad about it. Previously, when he was outside the Blue Sea Soul Sea, he had made a killing. Other than Wang Santai, there were others who wanted to surround them. Someone shouted, we also have information. Wang Santai's expression changed. What do you have? My information is unique. Han Fei waved his hand and pointed at Wang San. Okay, it's your turn. Let's go and have a chat. When the others saw this, they thought, such a great advantage has been monopolized by one person. Instantly, he was filled with resentment. Looking at the backs of Han Fei and the others who were about to leave, someone immediately shouted, many law enforcers and seniors from the big families have entered the ideal palace. The others frowned slightly. Although he had already expected the enforcers to come in. But if they really came in, it meant that the other party was really prepared to kill them with all their might. Wang Santai immediately exploded. He turned around and bared his teeth. Son of a bitch, do you think that's all the information I have? The man sneered and replied, I don't believe you have much information. After a moment, Han Fei and the others took Wang Santai to a small dirt slope. Han Fei thought for a while. This time, he didn't seem to be looking for any visualization fossils. He pondered. The significance of the prehistoric soul realm itself was not in the visualization of the fossils, but in the chaotic timelines. So when they came out, Han Fei and the others should be thinking about their own experiences. He had even forgotten about the matter of visualizing fossils. Although there were no visualization fossils, Han Fei had soul fruits. He took out a few intermediate soul fruits and said, "Tell me. What information do you have this time?" Wang Santai chuckled. Well, what that guy said just now was right, but he didn't know the specific strength of the law enforcers who came. But who do you think I am? This ideal palace is like my back garden. Luo Xiaobai interrupted, "Get to the point." Wang Santai sighed. According to my incomplete statistics, I'm afraid there are more than 30 law enforcers who came in this time. Humph. Han Fei was obviously disdainful of the number Wang Santai said. At the same time, he didn't believe it. Before entering the ideal palace, Han Fei had seen more than 100 law enforcers on that island. It must be those people who came in. And those were just what he saw. Are there any more of them? He didn't know at all. Why didn't these people come in at the beginning? The reason was very simple. How precious were law enforcers? Although there were more than 100 of them, they were also the accumulation of resources. How difficult was it to cultivate a law enforcer? It would be a great loss if they died easily. So, those people were just waiting. If the hidden Fisher-level clansmen could kill Han Fei and the others, it would save them the trouble. After all, when they were in the outside world, they didn't know what the ideal palace was like. Even the major families would have some speculations about the ideal palace. However, speculations were just speculations. Once they came in, it was hard to say whether they would survive. Who would want to come in? Luo Xiaobai said, "This information is worthless. There are more than 30 law enforcers, at least 100. Tell me something useful." Wang Santai was taken aback. Are there so many people? Did I inquire wrong? Wang Santai hurriedly said, "Don't panic. I know people from all the major families have come. Among them, some are heavenly talents of the previous generation. Among them, at least a dozen have appeared in the top 7 Soul Realm rankings." Luo Xiaobai frowned. This news was a bit heavy. In fact, they didn't need to care about the children of ordinary big families at all. After experiencing the 4 secret realms, they felt that they had been promoted to the extreme of their current state. Whether it was their soul, realm, or perception. If it weren't for the restrictions of the ideal palace, they would have become law enforcers long ago. That's too vague. How many do you mean, a dozen? Wang Santai smiled dryly. Well, I really can't be sure. It wasn't easy for me to find out. They probably told you to be on guard in advance to prevent their whereabouts from being leaked. Oh, by the way, the Chao family is also here. Especially Chao Qiu, now he is almost said to be the strongest of the younger generation in the Thousand Star City. I heard that the Chao family has a grudge against the Thug Academy. Han Fei was taken aback. Chao Qiu is here. Yes, I haven't heard any news about Chao Qiu for a long time. In the past 2 years, Chao Qiu should have been adapting to his god of war bloodline, right? When did they come in? Wang Santai said, they didn't hide it from us. He came in a few days ago, but after exiting the demon plant soul realm yesterday, he immediately disappeared. Luo Xiaobai looked at Han Fei. A coincidence? Han Fei shook his head. I don't know, but don't worry about it. Chao Tian listened to Chao Qiu. Chao Qiu was a good man. As for Chao Jiaran, be careful. Han Fei looked at Wang Santai. Is there no other intelligence? For example, what were the law enforcement officers going to do? How were they going to make a move? Where should I do it? Do you have any special methods? Wang Santai's face froze. Where? If it wasn't in the fifth spirit realm, then it was outside. Not everyone dares to enter the sixth soul realm. As he spoke, Wang Santai suddenly said, speaking of methods, it's not that there aren't any. It was said that someone had once dug up a strange thing in the prehistoric soul realm, which was said to be able to destroy souls. The kind that can be used in both the spirit realm and spirit realm. Luo Xiaobai asked, what thing? Wang Santai shook his head. I don't know. It's just a rumor. There was only one rumor that had been dug up. It seems to be something related to the law of time. Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly and directly stuffed the intermediate spiritual fruit in his hand to Wang Santai. This is intelligence. What you've just said is basically nonsense. Wang Santai was stunned. This is just a rumor. No one has seen it. You call this important intelligence? Han Fei asked, what else? Important intelligence like this? Wang Santai shook his head. In the war soul realm, the probability of death is extremely high. Does it count? Han Fei asked, have you been there? Wang Santai shook his head. Of course I haven't been there. Why would I go there for no reason? Do I want to die? Wang San said, although I haven't been there, I know a little bit about it. To be honest, in the war soul realm, there will be many chaotic wars. Besides, I can't be sure if you will be together after you go in. Because some people will be together, and some will be separated. It seems that it depends on the battles you encounter. But one thing is certain, you must be in the same place, the same section of the line. Han Fei and the others looked at each other. The situation in this war soul realm is also very complicated. Zhang Xuanyu said in surprise, doesn't that mean those big clans can't find us? Wang Santai quickly said, not necessarily. If they can't find you, they won't ambush you. Luo Xiaobai nodded. Okay. This intelligence is good enough. Let's go. After a while, she got rid of Wang Santai. Luo Xiaobai's face didn't look good. If the war soul realm is like this, we will be in danger. In the war soul realm, if there is no problem with time, a large number of strong masters will pour in. Once the 5 of us are separated, the consequences will be unpredictable. Zhang Xuanyu said, let's disguise ourselves and enter. Luo Xiaobai said, since the big clans are ready to take action, they will pay attention to everyone who enters the war soul realm. Han Fei was silent for a moment and suddenly licked the corner of his mouth. In fact, this may be an opportunity. Luo Xiaobai asked, huh? Han Fei grinned. In the outside world, do we have a chance to attack these big clans? Zhang Xuanyu immediately took a breath. You don't want us to fight them directly, do you? Lu Rinquang also took a breath. It doesn't matter if they are law enforcers. Anyway, their realms are suppressed. But what if the other party sends a group of heavenly talents who used to be on the list? Luo Xiaobai shook her head. It's too risky. Li Kuang immediately shouted, fight, fight, I have never been afraid of anyone. Zhang Xuanyu glanced at him. Dozens of people at our level, Chapter 1089. He could probably predict that the big families would take action in the war soul realm, but he didn't feel threatened, let alone the so-called fear. However, he had to take care of Luo Xiaobai and the others. This was because, in his opinion, one needed to have a strong physique to fight against a group. Here, only Lu Rinquang was strong enough to compete with others. However, if Yang Nanshi were here, she would probably kill Lu Rinquang alone. Whether or not Lu Rinquang had entered a completely berserk state, Lu Rinquang at this moment should be on par with Yang Nanshi when he was sober. In an unconscious state, they were about the same. When he was unconscious, Lu Rinquang would neglect a lot of his strength, leaving a great loophole for others. Han Fei paused. I think this is an opportunity. If all these people died, do you think the aristocratic families would feel heartache? In any case, our relationship with them has never been good. If we don't kill them after we catch them, won't we let them find trouble in the future? Luo Xiaobai slightly frowned. No, even if all the heavenly talents are killed, it won't help. You must know that our true opponent is not them, but the aristocratic families themselves. You can kill enforcers, but can you kill explorers? Where is the venerable one? Han Fei snorted. Why should I care? In any case, I'll get rid of whoever stops me first. Li Kuang immediately echoed, I agree. Let's do as much as we can. Luo Xiaobai rolled her eyes. None of your business. Luo Xiaobai said, don't forget that the intelligence seller said that they have methods to target souls. Han Fei smiled. I didn't forget. Just because they have it doesn't mean I can't stop them. I think I should go in first and kill a bunch of them first. Doesn't your Luo family have people too? Find a few people to follow them in. The general situation has been decided. You can advance again. Han Fei felt that he had the demon purification pot to protect him. He didn't have to be scared. He could always seize the opportunity to kill a batch of them first. Lu Renkuang looked at Han Fei in shock. Are you crazy? Prodigy roll. Do you want to fight 10 at once? Han Fei couldn't help but think of the battlefield in the Undying Soul Realm and grinned. Have you forgotten? I'm number 1 in the Undying Soul Realm. Zhang Xuanyu hurriedly said, that won't do. Those at the Undying Soul Realm actually didn't have any killing intent. I wondered if I should go in or together. At that time, I won't care if you fight 1 against 5. It shouldn't be a problem for the 4 of us to drag 1 each. Luo Xiaobai nodded. Since we're all from the Thug Academy, let's enter together. Otherwise, we'll leave together and come back at another time. Li Kuang howled, Aya, why is it so complicated? Couldn't he go over and take a look first? If we really can't beat them, can't we still run? Han Fei glanced at Li Kuang. That makes sense. Whether to enter or not, whether to fight or not, we have to go and take a look. Lu Renkuang suddenly said, wait a minute. Huh? Lu Renkuang's face shivered. Should we digest the gains from the prehistoric soul realm? My brain is still filled with some inexplicable power. I still have to absorb it. Zhang Xuanyu suddenly remembered. Oh, right, Han Fei, what's up with your rod technique? You shot out 200 stacking waves in a row, and your speed is extremely fast. You have to exchange pointers with me. Luo Xiaobai said, then let's rest for 2 days. Go in your best condition. 3 days later. Clang, clang, clang. The rod in Zhang Xuanyu's hand was like a phantom. With one strike, the void shook and a black hole opened. If Han Fei didn't use special means, he couldn't defeat this strange power quickly. However, Zhang Xuanyu was even more surprised than Han Fei. No, I just want to ask, how many stacking waves do you have in your rod technique? You seem to ignore space when you attack. Otherwise, you can't be so fast. Han Fei thought for a while. The Monkey King 3000 strikes should be able to stack 3000 times, or even more. Puff! Zhang Xuanyu almost spat out a mouthful of blood and exclaimed, how many times? Are you kidding me? Han Fei chuckled. But with my current strength, even at my peak, I can at most hit 300 times. Lu Renkuang was speechless. Do you think 300 times is too little? Even Luo Xiaobai's mouth twitched. Although it's not as much as the 9-layered waves in Furious Sea, the number of stacking waves is too many. This rod technique is very strong. Li Kuang smacked his lips and seemed to be thinking, how can I take Han Fei's 300 strikes? Suddenly, his face changed a little, and he almost lost control of himself. For some reason, he always felt that his self-confidence had been seriously destroyed. And Han Fei also discovered in the past few days that Zhang Xuanyu's rod technique had a terrifying armor-piercing power. The sharpness of metal was extremely strong. If this power was taken into account, Zhang Xuanyu's pure combat power was almost 80% higher than before. No wonder Zhang Xuanyu's ranking was so high. It seemed that the person he possessed had amazing spear skills. A while ago, Zhang Xuanyu said that he would study the armor-piercing art if he couldn't become a body refiner. Now it seemed that the experience improvement given by the prehistoric soul realm seemed to be even more abnormal. Han Fei couldn't help regretting it. I became a law enforcer too early. If I had known that there would be so many opportunities in the ideal palace, I wouldn't have become a law enforcer. When I pushed my comprehensive combat power to the extreme, wouldn't it be better? No wonder Zhang Xuanyu said that he felt that he would become very strong after becoming a law enforcer. He had almost reached the end of his road. If he became a law enforcer, how could he not be strong? Lu Renkuang was the same. His so-called gain was actually the gain from the sky-swallowing technique. The sky-swallowing technique could only absorb passively at the beginning, but after reaching the immortal soul realm, it underwent a transformation and could actively eat. Now, after a few days of research, it had transformed again. It could summon 3 big mouths at once. For example, the void shield could not only be used as a means of defense but also actively fight. It could be said to be both offensive and defensive. Among them, only Luo Xiaobai was slightly normal. She just had more means and didn't have the abnormal opportunities that Han Fei and the others had. Li Kuang asked, "Can we go now?" "If we don't go now, Li Kiki will come out." Upon hearing this, Han Fei immediately said, "Let's go over first. With our lineup, it won't be a problem to fight dozens of them." Luo Xiaobai nodded. "Of course, we still have to disguise ourselves." In the ideal palace, Han Fei didn't need the 1,000 faces technique at all. He could directly change his face. This might also be a protection rule of the ideal palace. However, when Han Fei and the others arrived outside the War Soul realm in batches, they were surprised to find that there were very few people here, only a dozen or so. So, no matter what Han Fei and the others looked like, as long as he came, he would definitely be noticed. Or rather, they didn't have to come. He could either leave the ideal palace or go to the 6th soul realm. However, the 6th soul realm was known as the reincarnation soul realm and was said to be extremely difficult. Even among the top 10 prodigies, many of them didn't dare to step into this place easily. Therefore, when Han Fei arrived at the War Soul realm, he knew that there was no need to pretend anymore. Needless to say, this place had been cleared. Han Fei reverted to his original appearance and looked at Luo Jiutian, Diwo Haiguang, and a young man with a sword on his back, who had been waiting for a long time. He couldn't help but be surprised. "Why are you here?" Diwo Haiguang smiled and said, "The two of us made a bet, betting on whether or not you would return. TSK, Tian, you lost." Luo Jiutian smiled faintly. "I thought that, given Xiaobai's character, she would definitely not come." At this moment, a blue flower bloomed on the ground, and Luo Xiaobai walked out of it. "I can try." "What about you?" Luo Jiutian said, "If you enter, I will definitely enter." Han Fei looked at Diwu Haiguang, only to see the latter smile. "I'm here on the orders of my teacher. After all, the Thug Academy used to be the 8th largest sect. It's only natural for us to help each other." Han Fei was a little surprised. "Our Thug Academy is not very familiar with the Sea Cloud Tower, is it?" Diwu Haiguang laughed. "Familiar? Indeed not. However, the 7 major sects and the big clans are not very harmonious. If Jiang Nanyu hadn't gone to the God's Memorial Tower, he should be here now." In addition to Diwu Haiguang, there was also a man with an ancient sword on his back. At first, Han Fei thought that he was from the big clans, but the man cupped his hands. Lin Yenny of the Heavenly Sword Sect. The character of a sword cultivator was quite cold. However, he was already here. Han Fei was grateful to him. Besides, the other party knew that he wouldn't have memories after leaving the ideal palace, but he still came. But at this moment, except for these 3 people, the others should be from the big clans. Because those people were not close, they seemed to be ready to escape at any time. Zhang Xuanyu and the others came one after another. Hearing that someone had come to help, they couldn't help but be very surprised. The Thug Academy was already in such a state, but someone still came to help. Lu Renkuang said happily, the more the better. One more person means one more combat power. When Li Luoluo came, there were 3 people with her. However, these 3 people stunned the others. Han Fei was surprised. Chao Qiu. It was Chao Qiu, Chao Tian, and Chao Jiaran. In any case, it never occurred to Han Fei that the 3 of them would come to help. Chao Qiu nodded, indicating that he had. Chao Jiaran, on the other hand, took a deep look at Han Fei and said, although I still want to kill you now, I can't do anything to you. But this time, our target is the Truman Show. The enemy of my enemy can be an ally for a short time. However, we will only deal with the people of the Chu sect. We won't care about anyone else. Han Fei looked at Luo Xiaobai, who looked at Luo Jiutian. Luo Jiutian sent a voice transmission to them. The southern Chao and the northern Chu have never been on good terms. This was not the first time they had fought against each other. This time, there are a lot of people from the Chu sect. I wonder how many the 3 of them can handle. Han Fei thought to himself, that's a lot. Which of these 3 people is weak? Especially Chao Qiu. To what extent has his strength grown now? In Han Fei's opinion, Chao Tian was the one who could fight against 5 people alone. At that time, Zhang Xuanyu and Lu Renkuang attacked him at the same time, but they couldn't shake him at all. And Zhang Xuanyu and Lu Renkuang were strong enough to be on the heavenly talent list. It could be seen how strong Chao Tian was. Needless to say, Chao Qiu. He was able to force Han Fei into such a corner. Now that the bloodline of the god of war had been revealed, his strength must have been greatly improved. And Chao Jiaran was not weak either. A woman who could fight with him head-on, and she also had the ability of a soul warrior. These 3 people were enough to take on 5 or 6 heavenly talents on the list. Luo Xiaobai said, we have to prevent the Chao family from attacking us. We'd better keep a distance from them. Han Fei responded, don't worry. If Chao Tian and Chao Jiaran came, I would also be suspicious. But Chao Qiu is also here, so I'm relieved. Han Fei immediately said, okay. In return, I will exchange a secret of the immortal soul realm. As for whether I can take it out of the ideal palace, I don't care. Han Fei thought that if these people really wanted to help, he could tell them the information of the void lines in the memorial tower of the no return. Although he had taken the golden page, he could let them have a look at the ancient picture. Chapter 1090. Since someone came to help, they certainly wouldn't refuse. However, whether it was Han Fei or Luo Xiaobai, they had long been used to being the first team. Even Li Luoluo was beyond their trust. Therefore, even if Chao Qiu and the others joined them, in the soul realm, Han Fei couldn't trust them with their backs. Diwu hazy light, there should be no one else coming, right? Luo Jiutian nodded slightly. I don't think so. If those who came this time were not strong enough, the chances of them dying were very high. Also, remember, after entering the war spirit realm, the first thing you need to do is to find your own people. Han Fei was surprised. Huh? Does that mean it's random? Diwu Glimmer smiled faintly. He has passed the prehistoric soul realm. Can't you all see it? In the ideal palace, everything was possible. The entire world was created by a strange and terrifying divine will. Therefore, be it the timeline or the scenes that appeared, they were all designed according to the will of the Creator. Everything in history could be replicated here. What timeline did you enter? What scenes did you appear in? What people and things did you encounter? Perhaps there's a deeper meaning to it. Luo Jiutian nodded. If we say that the first 4 soul realms are places of training, then the first 4 soul realms are places of training. Then, from the 5th soul realm onwards, it was no longer a trial, but a true battlefield. There were no soul fruits, soul crystals, or visualization fossils. After entering, we may be together, or we may be separated. What we're facing isn't just the aristocratic families. It's also possible that we're facing the life forms of the sea race, prehistoric life forms, and overlords of the sky. I can't tell what I've encountered. Luo Xiaobai and the others frowned. How can we find him quickly? Luo Jiutian smiled faintly and said, that's easy. They just had to agree on a location. Regardless of whether or not we will appear together at the beginning, or what kind of battle we will encounter. As long as we find an opportunity to return to the city and find the sea god's statue, it will be fine. In the city, where the human race was protected, humans were not allowed to fight among themselves. Otherwise, those illusory divine souls in the soul realm will attack you. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. There is a city in the war soul realm? Diwu Glimmer grinned and laughed lightly. Not only is there a city, but it's also incomparably magnificent. However, the city was already surrounded by seawater. In addition, it was extremely easy to distinguish outsiders in the war soul realm. Those who didn't have death chi were definitely outsiders. Needless to say, you'll know when you get there. Han Fei said to Luo Xiaobai and the others telepathically, run to the city in case of an emergency. Luo Jiutian frowned and said, there's no exit. Luo Jiutian said, there is no exit. That city seemed to be constantly waging war against the outside world. We will only come out when the war is over. Han Fei's heart sank. Good heavens, does the war mean that this city has been destroyed? Luo Xiaobai said coldly, okay. Lu. Han Fei and the team. Jiu. Although they had fewer people, this war soul realm seemed to have its own unique rules. In other words, if the aristocratic families wanted to make a move against them, they had to follow certain rules. Yang, Chen Lut. As long as there were not thousands of people attacking them the moment they appeared, they would be able to win this battle. Han. He li 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 yang, he li, tian chen, li, he li li zhang. Ti li li, ti, he. Li yang li, han, yang, han, ti, han. One was ranked first, and the other was ranked third. Glancing at the mist-like entrance, Han Fei suddenly said to Luo Xiaobai, if there's a chance, I want to know why human beings, sea demons, and those other races fight. Han Fei said this to Luo Xiaobai alone. The latter glanced at Han Fei and didn't speak, indicating that she knew. Han Fei had always had a deep doubt. From the beginning, he only knew that human beings and sea demons were mortal enemies. When deducing the fish avatar technique, Han Fei felt that it was because human beings were divided. Some chose the sea, and some chose the land. But even so, the hatred shouldn't be so deep, right? They didn't even leave each other any leeway. From the annihilation of the heavenly desolate city to the annihilation of the city they were about to go to. And the death of countless beasts, was it really just because of the division between human beings? Also, Han Fei felt that what he saw and heard in the prehistoric soul realm couldn't be meaningless. He didn't care about what the big ape said. He didn't know whether the beast emperor was a beast emperor or not. However, what did Luo Xiaobai mean when she heard, sacrifice all living beings? Luo Rinquang didn't remember what happened in his timeline. However, he had seen the corpse of a king, and there was even talk of slaying a god. There was definitely an extremely deep secret behind all of this. Are the 7 great soul realms really just training grounds? While thinking, Han Fei had already stepped into the mist. He felt as though his body had been flying in the void for a very long time, and it seemed to be moving very quickly. When a flash of light appeared in front of him, Han Fei suddenly opened his eyes. What he saw was an incomparably real world. In front of him, there was a huge crimson setting sun. Below him was a boundless sea, waves stacked on top of each other and surged. Beside Han Fei was a team of 100 people, who were flying in the sky and seemed to be in a hurry. Han Fei didn't know why he suddenly appeared. However, these people did not react at all. However, the first thing he did was to look at his own team. But then Han Fei's heart sank. Luo Xiaobai and the others were not here. Fuck. Didn't they say that there was a chance for them to appear together? Why am I so unlucky? At this time, Han Fei could still feel a trace of death aura from those people above. Suddenly, Han Fei noticed that there were two people who didn't have death aura on them. When he looked at the two people, he found that the two people were also looking at him. Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly. The clothes these two people were wearing were obviously from his era. Besides, when the two people saw Han Fei could feel their nervousness. Are they from the big clans? Han Fei looked at his clothes and then at the phantom glass wings, thinking in surprise, don't these people pay attention to these characteristics? Is it because my phantom glass wings aren't obvious enough? While Han Fei was thinking, he suddenly heard the person flying in the front, holding a white tentacle conch in his hand, suddenly shouting, full speed ahead. The battle ahead is dangerous. Huh. The team of 100 people increased their speed by 30% and flew like shadows. None of these people spoke, and they all looked solemn. Han Fei glanced at them. They seemed to be going to die. Han Fei thought to himself, a team of 100 hidden fishers. The one in the front seems to be a law enforcer. Such a group of people can be regarded as an extremely powerful force. I wonder what kind of enemy they are. They seem to be ready to die. Han Fei immediately approached a person not far away. Hey! Do you think we can go back alive this time? The person Han Fei asked was already middle-aged. Hearing Han Fei's words, he glanced at him, and his solemn brows relaxed a little. Maybe not. But what's there to be afraid of? We are not heavenly talents like you. Death is not a pity. If we can survive, we'd better try to survive. Han Fei's heart did a flip. He was himself. However, these people seemed to have already regarded him as a heavenly talent. Is this also the rule? Han Fei was about to look at the two people behind him. However, he subconsciously used perception. However, what he didn't expect was that perception was actually effective. Huh. In all the previous soul realms, perception was useless. However, in this war environment, perception actually worked. Is it because they know that there will be a battle, so the rules here deliberately release the perception ability? Han Fei felt that the creator of this ideal palace was far more powerful than he thought. Could a king really create so many soul realms and the complicated time and space inside them? In his perception, the two people behind him seemed to be muttering something. And at the end of his perception, Han Fei found a big ship, which was fighting. The ship was not as big as the dragon boat, but it was still nearly a kilometer long. At this moment, some strong masters on the ship were fighting. The sky was colorful, half-mermaids and shrimp soldiers and crab generals appeared in the sea, and a big octopus was slapping the hull. The array on the ship had been mostly broken, and someone had self-detonated. Son of a bitch, they're already fighting like this? The flying speed of a hidden fisher was still very fast. I wonder if there are fishing boats in this era. From what I can feel, there probably aren't. In the case of sprinting at full speed, it only took them less than 10 minutes, and the people on Han Fei's side were already excited. The leading strong master shouted, "Get ready to fight." At the moment this person spoke, everyone had already attached their spiritual beasts to their bodies. The sky was strange and dazzling. The armorist had already put his hand on the armor box, and the others also took out their weapons. Except for the two people following at the back. Judging from the behavior of the two people, they seemed to want to escape from the battlefield. Han Fei thought to himself, how can I let you do that? Han Fei roared, "Kill! Those who retreat will die." The two in the back, what are you doing? First. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1091. Hearing Han Fei's words, the two of them almost hated Han Fei to death. Their purpose was not to fight. Han Fei said telepathically, "You want to leave? You'll have to ask me if I agree. Since you're here, don't even think about leaving." Sure enough, the leader turned around and said, "Those who don't fight will die." The two of them could do nothing about it. Fortunately, there were so many people here. If it weren't for them, they wouldn't have taken the initiative to meet Han Fei. They were not peerless heavenly talents. Although they were confident that they were not weak, it was almost impossible for the two of them to survive against Han Fei. However, the two of them also spoke telepathically. Han Fei, I didn't expect that you would dare to come. Could it be that you want to kill us here? Han Fei sneered. There will be plenty of opportunities to kill you. Han Fei gave a simple response. If the two of them dared to run, he would be the first to kill them. Now that he saw the prawn soldiers and crab generals on the surface of the sea, he was ready to experience the strength of these creatures. When Han Fei turned into an ape, he didn't feel it. He just felt that there were a lot of shrimp soldiers and crab generals. With a swing of his staff, he could knock down dozens of people. However, at that time, he was too strong, so he felt that the other party was very weak. But now, he wasn't an ape, and his opponent didn't look weak either. At the very least, the battle on the surface of the sea was in full swing. All kinds of illusory figures dazzled the eyes, and all kinds of weapons filled the sky. He heard someone shout, "Kill! You can die, but you can't lose the levitating stone." Han Fei frowned. Floating stones? Floating stones for making fishing boats? Han Fei couldn't help but daydream. At this time, the humans had already discovered the use of the levitating stone. He guessed that the levitating stones had only appeared after his mother and the other experts had conquered their territories. But now, it seemed that something was not right. It was during the course of the war that someone discovered it. No wonder the humans were so fearless in battle. With the levitating stone and the mighty means of a powerhouse, they might be able to create a levitating island right now. Once humans lived in the sky, why would they be afraid of the sea demons? However, when Han Fei figured out what the humans were thinking, his heart sank. Because if the humans' plan had succeeded, then this spirit realm shouldn't have existed. In other words, this soul realm was just a stronghold for humans. A partial failure would not affect the overall situation. Whoosh! Han Fei's figure flashed out. His fist mark was dazzling, and there was a looming array on it. Shrimp soldiers and crab generals, how should I put it? It was quite different from what Han Fei had imagined. Han Fei had thought that the shrimp soldiers were just human beings holding harpoons. A crab general was a muscular man with a crab's lower body and a crab's head. He held a large copper hammer in his hand. In fact, the shrimp soldier was indeed humanoid, but it didn't have legs. Its lower body was that of a shrimp with claws, and its upper body was that of a water droplet with 2 feelers. They held harpoons or spears in their hands and carried 6 spears on their backs. It was a little different from what he saw on the offshore platform. He had used his shell as armor and condensed it into a battle suit. That crab general wasn't holding a huge copper hammer either. Those chubby pincers were even more terrifying than the big copper hammer. Their bodies were like black iron ore that had been dug out from a trench. Almost their entire bodies were heads. Besides, the crab generals were not of the same species. Some were big and some were small. Some had a lot of shrimp soldiers standing on their backs, some had long legs, and some had barbs and hooks on their bodies, and some had blade-like bodies. They were of different species. At this moment, Han Fei chose a chubby, strong-looking crab general with shrimp soldiers standing on it. Originally, they were going to besiege a few hidden fishers. However, seeing that Han Fei was coming, the 3 shrimp soldiers each pulled out a spear and shot it at Han Fei. The spear pierced through the void and appeared in front of Han Fei in the blink of an eye. This was the air-breaking strike, the power that Han Fei was best at. However, now everyone could do it, and the gap between him and others couldn't be widened. Now, for this kind of attack, as long as it was not too fast, Han Fei could deal with it with a flash. Whoosh! Han Fei suddenly rushed forward 100 meters and punched out. The crab general swung its big pincers, and the shadow of the hammer hit Han Fei's punch. Bam! 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 The void exploded. This crab general wasn't that strong after all. With just a phantom, it wanted to tear apart Han Fei's strike after the formation was imprinted? Even the full blow of a junior law enforcer might not be able to do that. The shadow of the hammer exploded. The crab general didn't seem to expect Han Fei to be so strong. It raised its pincers, and ripples burst out, and two big hammers blocked in front of it. And the three shrimp soldiers suddenly appeared in the void, past the fist mark, and turned into three streamers in midair, full of killing intent. The corners of Han Fei's mouth raised. He stretched out the void lines and appeared in front of the three of them. When the three of them were unprepared, the void lines clenched. Swish. Chilla. Crack. The draw technique. However, Han Fei found that the defense of these shrimp soldiers seemed to be quite strong. He wanted to kill them with one slash, but he didn't kill any of them. He just broke the shells on their heads. Wow! So powerful. Boom! The crab general was punched by Han Fei, but its pincers were not broken. The power of his punch was blocked once again. Devil change. Han Fei's aura suddenly increased. With his current strength, he couldn't kill them, which meant that these shrimp soldiers and crab generals had the strength of law enforcers. And these were just the most ordinary shrimp soldiers and crab generals. However, these shrimp soldiers and crab generals seemed to be only peak-level hidden fishers. Something's wrong. If they are only peak-level hidden fishers, how can a random small fry have such a level of defense? Han Fei confirmed a fact: these shrimp soldiers and crab generals were also suppressed in realms. Or rather, they were shaped like this. In reality, they might really be law enforcers, and probably not junior law enforcers. However, because their strength was limited to peak-level hidden fishers, they didn't have the ability to become law enforcers. Chilla. With another slash, three shrimp soldiers were directly beheaded by Han Fei. Han Fei punched out again. This time, the fist mark was completely different from before. With one punch, the crab general was directly smashed into pieces. Seeing that the two of them had also entered the battle, Han Fei smiled and immediately went on a killing spree. After using the secret method, Han Fei was at least an intermediate peak-level law enforcer. If he couldn't defeat a group of shrimp soldiers and crab generals, he wouldn't deserve the title of a top heavenly talent. Bam! 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 Puff! Puff! But in a moment, wherever Han Fei passed, the shrimp soldiers and crab generals were all shattered. Many people were stunned to see Han Fei's strength. One punch for one. Someone shouted, "Come and help." Han Fei looked around. 1,000 meters away, a person was fighting with a half-mermaid. The half-mermaid was obviously a law enforcer and controlled the power of ice. At this moment, there were tens of thousands of ice cones like knives. Han Fei thought to himself, why do hidden fishers have to fight law enforcers wherever I go? In this space, not all creatures' realms would be suppressed. Otherwise, creatures like the great ape wouldn't have appeared, and there wouldn't have been the so-called sky-covering giant hand that could slap the great ape half to death with a single slap. Of course, this half-mermaid couldn't reach that level. Han Fei's figure flew. It flickered continuously in the void. Every time it stopped, one or two living beings would fall. When Han Fei rushed over, the human who was fighting was already covered with wounds. They seemed to have been fighting for a long time. When Han Fei saw that the person was taking spiritual fruits, he immediately noticed that something was wrong. The other party wanted to take spiritual fruits. Of course, it was to replenish spiritual energy. However, wasn't spiritual energy freely available in the ideal palace? Han Fei also wanted to check his own data. However, he found that nothing had changed. This meant that only outsiders like him could have infinite spiritual energy and energy. However, these people and the sea creatures couldn't. With this in mind, Han Fei clenched his fist and launched the sacrificing punch. When the huge crimson fist mark flew across the sky, the half-mermaid immediately bared its teeth. Ice walls appeared one after another, and it even grabbed a large amount of seawater from the sea and rushed at Han Fei. The human took a breath. Although he was surprised by Han Fei's strength, he soon forgot about it. After all, there were many strong masters everywhere, and there was no need to be shocked. This human also slashed at the half-mermaid with his sword. Clatter! At this moment, a huge tentacle suddenly stretched out from the bottom of the sea, seemingly slow but actually very fast. The millstone-like suckers directly sucked the human law enforcer. Han Fei reacted extremely quickly. With a flash, he disappeared in place. Not only did he avoid this tentacle, but he also used the draw technique to cut the half-mermaid again. Crack, 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 puff. Faced with Han Fei's endless energy, the law enforcer-level half-mermaid's body was directly cut in half. In the sacrificing punch, it was crushed into pieces. However, the human law enforcer that was sucked by the suckers shrank into a ball and was sucked to death. Damn it! Han Fei tried to suppress the surging emotions in his heart. This was not real. This was all history repeating itself. He couldn't be impulsive. Han Fei was about to continue to kill the shrimp soldiers and crab generals. After all, only by ending the battle here as soon as possible could he have a chance to go to the city. However, before he could do anything, he heard an explosion above the hull of the ship. A destructive hurricane pierced through the sky and the earth. The terrifying power made Han Fei's throat taste sweet. He was injured. Bam! 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 The arrays on the hull were shattered inch by inch. Under this blow, at least hundreds of people and shrimp soldiers were directly shocked to death under the impact of this terrifying power. Wow! Is there a strong master of this level? An explorer? Han Fei's first thought was that it was an explorer. Otherwise, if it was a law enforcer battle, it wouldn't have been able to kill so many people. As long as the human race is not destroyed, I will not retreat. Han Fei saw a pair of big bloody hands grabbing a ball-like creature out of the void and tearing it apart. Rumble. To Han Fei's surprise, the creature directly blew itself up. Fuck. Han Fei flashed and dived into the sea. However, Han Fei was almost a step too late. Hit by the huge energy, Han Fei vomited a mouthful of blood. Flash, flash, after a few flashes, Han Fei used the hull as a barrier and hid at the bottom of the ship. One vortex after another was set off at the bottom of the ship, which was caused by the energy shock. However, Han Fei was also fighting, and it was even fiercer. After all, the sea creatures lived in the sea. Therefore, they were thinking, it's the same if I smash your hull and make your ship fall. In the sea, blood was spreading. Han Fei's expression was extremely ugly. Blood and broken limbs were everywhere around him. Han Fei felt a kind of mania. Although he knew that this was something that had happened before, he still couldn't calm down. Fuck, son of a bitch. Chapter 1092. Han Fei frowned. The array at the bottom of the ship had been mostly damaged. Some places had already been damaged. Because they were fighting around the hull, the human beings were in a passive position. Therefore, many people had died in the battle. Han Fei couldn't fight in the sky above the sea. He could only see through his perception that it was a half-mermaid riding on a serpent, raising waves with its harpoon. However, the human beings didn't seem weak either. Someone was standing on a lobster, surrounded by 100 swords. The shadows of the swords cut the void, and the sky was full of swords. The two sides were locked in a fierce battle and soon got out of the range of the hull. Han Fei's heart sank. The battle in the water was even more fierce than on the ship. Han Fei's eyes turned cold, and the infinite water turned into thousands of knives. The seawater surged, and the knives began to spin like a storm in the water. Huh! Kill that man! A half-mermaid roared and pierced the void with her harpoon. In Han Fei's perception, about dozens of kilometers away, a real mermaid was pointing a long whip at him. Then, Han Fei saw two clam girls jumping at him. Han Fei sneered. You want two clam girls to come here? Who are you looking down on? At the bottom of the sea, Han Fei was slaughtering everyone. The shrimp soldiers, crab generals, and sea creatures whose realms were suppressed were almost no match for him. Wherever the infinite water passed, blood splashed. On the human side, many people seemed to be greatly motivated by Han Fei's strength. Someone shouted, "Good, good, good. He's indeed a heavenly talent of the human race. Kill him." Someone grinned with fanatical eyes. "Let's go. I want one of the 2 clam girls." A manipulator summoned infinite seaweed and threw it at the clam girl, as if to buy time for Han Fei. Han Fei's figure flashed on the bottom of the sea. Wherever he passed, thousands of knives followed him. His invincible fighting intent dyed the bottom of the sea gold. The 2 clam girls let out sharp screams at the same time. The weird sound echoed. Many people on the bottom of the sea, including the shrimp soldiers, were holding their heads and struggling to resist. Han Fei suddenly felt that something was wrong, and Little Black and Little White immediately attached to him. Then, he saw thousands of tiny invisible threads trying to control him. The 2 who went to stop the clam girls were both stiff at this moment. At the last moment, both of them shouted at the same time, "Explode." Choosing to self-destruct was the only thing they could do. Sometimes, the strength of one's combat skills could not determine the outcome of a battle. Sea creatures were different from humans. They had some unique talents. Han Fei's face couldn't have looked more awful. "You're courting death." Han Fei's figure swam like a fish dragon, ignoring the creepy sound and rushing out. From afar, the void lines circled around him as the sacrificial punch blasted out. Crack! The 2 clam demons closed their shells at the same time and even spun themselves at Han Fei. Bang! However, they underestimated Han Fei's power. Under the rebound of the formation, the 2 clam girls smashed into the seabed like cannonballs, creating 2 large pits on the seabed. One of them bore most of the power of the sacrificing punch. The clam girl inside was probably stunned by the impact as her shell was slightly open. The void lines took the opportunity to cut into the shell, and Han Fei's knife sank into the shell, splitting it into 2 pieces. Boom boom boom. In Han Fei's hands, 2 sledgehammers appeared out of thin air. At this moment, he hammered the other shell again and again. "You're courting death." In the distance, the mermaid who seemed to be the commander rushed over like a shuttling swordfish. Han Fei suddenly grinned and looked up at her. An array emerged on the 2 hammers. Boom! Kacha! Han Fei did it on purpose. "Are your clam girls very strong?" "It's not like I haven't killed one before." "What else can you do except that your shell is hard? Do you really think I'm still a junior hidden fisher?" Throwing away the sledgehammers, Han Fei took out a kitchen knife. Looking at the mermaid who was much weaker than Xia Shaochan, he said, "Or should I call you a mermaid? I'd like to see how strong the legendary mermaids are." Chilla. The knife slashed out, and the seawater seemed to be cut in half by a white mark. Ignorant human beings, you can't escape the fate of extinction. Pop! A big bubble appeared. There was no telling whether it was an ability or something else. The bubble was so dented that both sides were stuck together, but it wasn't broken. Aw! A strange song sounded at the bottom of the sea. The scene around Han Fei suddenly changed. Even though he had the yin-yang divine eyes, the scene had changed. Wait, a big bubble was pulled out of the battlefield by itself? Han Fei found it very quickly. He didn't know what kind of power the mermaid had used to pull Han Fei and herself out of the battlefield. Hey! Demon, what's the deep hatred between humans and mermaids? Why are you fighting each other like this? Han Fei pretended to be angry, but in fact, he wanted to get information out of her. As he spoke, the million knife art appeared again, cutting the water balls layer by layer. Han Fei's perception scanned and found that he had been taken more than 30 kilometers away. The woman opposite him sneered. In the competition of power, there is only life and death. There is no why. As she spoke, the long whip in the woman's hand broke through the seawater and lashed at Han Fei like a scaled giant snake. The whip was intimidating. Han Fei bared his teeth, stepped on the coiled turtle array, and held the long whip with one hand. Han Fei frowned slightly. His palm was pierced. However, Han Fei didn't panic. Such a minor injury was nothing to him. As Han Fei pulled, billowing spiritual energy surged along the long whip to the mermaid. Boom! Under the spiritual energy explosion, the void lines were launched, and Han Fei's figure flashed away. He saw that the mermaid was wrapped in a bubble and was completely fine. Soul attack. You're indeed a top heavenly talent of the human race, but you can't save humans. The trend of the way of heaven is irreversible. Water balls only the size of a fist emerged in the seawater. As soon as they appeared, there were thousands of them, and they all swept at Han Fei like a bombardment. Han Fei took out the embroidery needle and launched the Monkey King 3,000 strikes. At this moment, Han Fei was like a ferocious man who was going against the wind. The rod shadows had long disappeared, and there were continuous explosions around him, but none of them could stop Han Fei's footsteps. The mermaid abandoned the long whip, but there was a long spear in her hand. She slapped her tail, and waves surged behind her, as if the sea behind her were all supported by her strength. Han Fei grinned. In his perception, the two bastards from the big clans had begun to slip away and were fighting further and further away. Han Fei said to them via voice transmission, "Why are you two running? Come and help." As soon as Han Fei's voice transmission came out, someone immediately noticed them. Because Han Fei really fought hard, and everyone could see that. The two kids from the big clans were fighting further and further away, immediately attracting the attention of others. Someone shouted in a low voice, "Anyone who escapes will die." Han Fei sneered. "Want to leave? Did I say you could leave?" The two of them gnashed their teeth in anger. However, they were also quite shocked. Han Fei's perception had reached 100 kilometers. On Han Fei's side, the mermaid seemed to have condensed the power of the sea, so Han Fei didn't dare to underestimate her. The Monkey King 10,000 strikes was suitable for fighting, but not for fighting to the death. Since the void lines couldn't control the opponent, he would attack with all his strength. Hum! The sea waves around him rose into the air. Sacrifice! Suddenly, Han Fei's face changed, because there was a finger pointing at him in the air. Damn it! Han Fei's face changed drastically. He had thought that this woman's desperate attack was just to fight him, but it turned out that she had a scheme. Supreme Yin-Yang Wheel. All of a sudden, a formation diagram appeared. Han Fei disappeared and turned into a map, fusing with little black and little white. In this realm, once he died, he would really die. Han Fei didn't want to take this bet. The appearance of the yin-yang pattern somehow caused the sea to move and the soul power from all directions gathered. Swish! Whether it was the power of the spear or the finger, they all ignited dazzling flames at the edge of the array map, but they couldn't go any further. Kacha! Kacha! The array map flickered in the air and appeared in front of the mermaid. Puff! So what if he was a law enforcer? Since he was risking his life, he had to be thorough. At that moment, Han Fei was completely locked on. He only had two choices, either to use the Demon King's contract or to launch a fierce attack. The only way to deal with the sacrificing punch was to combine and open the map. This was also one of Han Fei's strongest moves. Back then, Han Fei could shake Cao Qiu, and today, he could shake these two people. Sure enough, as soon as this map appeared, everyone's eyes gathered here. The mermaid was turned by the yin-yang pattern and was directly cut down under it. The finger was also shattered inch by inch. Some strong masters were rescuing Han Fei. They were shocked that the human race had such a heavenly talent. However, someone shouted, "How can you touch the heavenly talent of the human race?" In the deep sea, a big octopus aimed at Han Fei. However, someone directly burned his bloodline and life, shouting angrily, "Go to hell." Han Fei was like a fuse. Perhaps because of his identity as a heavenly talent, both the Sea Clan and the human race exploded. For a moment, the sky was full of killing intent, and the battle was fierce. Han Fei, on the other hand, fought unscrupulously in the sea for a while. He was trying to control his thoughts. The state of the supreme yin-yang wheel was very strange and difficult to control. It would occupy his consciousness. In his body, a black thread was struggling as if trying to break the shackles. Little Black's tyranny made him confused. In the end, it was the demon purification pot that shook and Han Fei was freed from the yin-yang pattern. However, when Han Fei returned to his original body, he was surprised to find that there was no war here. The sea was full of broken wood chips. As far as his eyes could see, broken corpses floated in the sea, and blood flowed along the seawater, dyeing the sea red and reaching the sky. Han Fei didn't even know what happened. The battle was over. Han Fei flew in the sky alone. In the sky, the setting sun was like blood. On the sea, there was no one, not even a living creature nearby. No, something's wrong. Chapter 1093. Han Fei frowned. That's impossible. The war had just started. He had the experience of fusing with Little Black and Little White before. Although he used the supreme yin-yang image this time, the battle shouldn't have ended so quickly. In order to cause such a completely destructive battle, there must be a strong master, right? If there was a strong master, why didn't they attack him? It seemed that Han Fei was the only one left in the world. There was no one within Han Fei's perception range. Wait! Where did those two people go? Han Fei's perception swept around. There were no corpses here that belonged to those two people. Were they killed? No, they are children of big clans. Since they dare to enter the War Soul realm, how can they be incompetent? Did these two people run away? However, Han Fei didn't think it was very likely. If they ran away, it at least meant that they fought to the end. So in the end, no one cared about them. No, no. Why do I feel that these people have been dead for a long time? Han Fei frowned and suddenly felt that something was wrong. These people seemed to have been dead for a while and didn't seem to have just died. Could it be that a long time had passed when I changed the image? Wow! A weird idea suddenly came to Han Fei's mind. Does this battle really exist? Han Fei swallowed. He didn't dare to admit the idea in his heart. If this battle didn't exist, then what did he encounter? He even talked to them, even talked to that mermaid, fought to the death, everything was just too real. Illusion? Han Fei pondered. If it's an illusion, can the people in the illusion have thoughts? Han Fei remembered what Diwu Hazy Light said. How can you tell if a person is an outsider? You just need to see if there is a dead air on them. Or, in fact, those people have already died. And this world was just playing out an endless war. What's the purpose? Han Fei couldn't figure it out. If he didn't die, then were the two people from the big families still alive? Han Fei flew back in the direction from which he came, expressionless. What if what he encountered at the beginning was not a group of dead undying souls? After all, the demon purification pot didn't seem to be suitable here, and he couldn't see any information. However, Han Fei had never seen such an immortal hero soul. It was almost no different from a human being. Or could it be that his previous state had allowed him to escape from the battle itself in the chaos? So, that war had nothing to do with him. So, the two from the aristocratic families weren't actually running away, but trying to leave the battlefield? Once he stood on the sidelines, he would have nothing to do with the battlefield, and the battle would automatically evolve. What a terrifying rule. Han Fei rushed in the direction where he came from. He was thinking, if the two of them were not dead, could he catch up with them? However, after about 4 hours, Han Fei suddenly had a hunch that something was wrong. Han Fei had just stopped over the sea. A silver light flashed in the void. Because the speed was too fast, Han Fei grabbed the blood-drinking knife, blocked it with a swish, and took the opportunity to flash 100 meters away. Peng peng. The surface of the water exploded, and 5 gorgeous red flowers stretched out. Vines like slender snakes appeared from Han Fei's wrists and neck. Humph! Han Fei shook his body and shattered those little snakes. Looking at the pistols that drilled into his body, he waved his hand and used the million knife art to cut the vines. However, in this short period of time, Han Fei found that a large array had been set up. A trap and kill array. Han Fei smiled. You want to play arrays with me? At the moment the array appeared, an identical reverse array was quickly outlined. Han Fei stepped on the coiled turtle array and could crack it in less than 2 seconds. However, at this time, a huge hammer shadow appeared in the void and smashed at Han Fei like a meteorite. Yang Nanshi. Han Fei raised his head, and an array appeared on his fist mark. He activated the devil change and launched the sacrificing punch. Who told you that I can't fight when I'm setting up an array? Clang golden ripples were rippling, and the sea was sunken. Han Fei stood proudly in the void and controlled the million knife art to strangle the manipulator. The previous hunter appeared under Han Fei, and the silver light stabbed up from below. Huh! Han Fei flickered left and right, activated the 9 mansions dragon chant and the law of gravity at the same time, and the void lines darted at the enemy like lightning. However, the hunter's body flashed, twisted the space, and appeared elsewhere. Yi family, star teleportation technique. Bam! At this moment, the array exploded. Han Fei's figure flashed 7 or 8 times in a row, avoiding another array that was about to be formed, and left the battlefield. Han Fei didn't underestimate the number of enemies. At this moment, another hunter appeared, assisted by an armorist's sneak attack. However, to everyone's surprise, a golden light suddenly appeared on Han Fei's body, and he didn't even dodge, letting the hunter slash at his back. Puff! When the bone knife entered his body, the hunter's body suddenly stiffened and he couldn't move. Han Fei stepped on the coiled turtle array and sneered. It seems that you came in a hurry. My guess was right. Those 2 guys shouldn't have left much earlier than me. So, you didn't have time to mobilize a large number of people to kill me. The hunter behind him was naturally under Han Fei's control. The moment she launched an attack, Han Fei knew that this hunter was at least 2 levels weaker than the previous one. That was why Han Fei dared to stay still unscrupulously. Yang Qian, what are you doing? Yang Nanshi appeared, a trace of anger on her face. Han Fei grinned. Are you asking her? TSK, I don't know if I should tell you. Not many hunters have been able to escape from me in close combat. Fuse. When the yin-yang divine eyes appeared, Han Fei immediately found everyone in some concealment arrays. There were 2 groups in total. Apart from the one under his control, there were only 9 people left. Han Fei murmured, you want to kill me with only 10 people? Who gave you the courage? As soon as Han Fei said that, Yang Nanshi suddenly shouted, Yang Yuan, retreat. However, Yang Nanshi was too late. A terrifying electric arc had already fallen on the armorist. A big golden red shadow appeared. It was none other than Little Gold. The lightning blade, as the ultimate skill of a legendary creature, was not so easy to resist. Unless the opponent's physique could completely resist this terrifying electric current, he would definitely be killed. Otherwise, Han Fei would definitely kill this person. Han Fei was extremely fast. He saw seaweed covering the sky, sword grasses attacking him, and green vines preparing to save people, but no matter how fast they were, how could they be faster than Han Fei, who was at his fastest speed? Mastering the 64-dimensional fish dragon dance had already made Han Fei's speed reach an extreme. Of course, there was a figure faster than Han Fei, and that was the Yi family. The man had already appeared in front of Yang Yuan. Han Fei roared, seal. An array suddenly rose around the 2 of them. The hunter from the Yi family twisted the space again and disappeared in the array. It was not that he didn't want to save him, but that he couldn't. Han Fei was not slow. If he was trapped for a moment, once Han Fei approached him, he couldn't guarantee that he could survive. The void lines buckled the armorist, and Han Fei punched him, blasting him away. This punch was so heavy that the armorist's bones were all broken. However, in the eyes of the others, they were a little surprised. Why didn't Han Fei just kill him? Did Han Fei underestimate Yang Yuan's physique? In the blink of an eye, Yang Nanshi had already approached him and waved her hammer like a dragon. Han Fei punched back and they exchanged dozens of rounds in an instant. And Yang Yuan had been rescued by the opponent's manipulator. In the battle, Han Fei suddenly grinned. Explode! Yang Nanshi realized something. However, before she said anything, she saw Yang Yuan suddenly explode himself. Then, Han Fei didn't even need to take action himself. The hunter who had been controlled had appeared next to the manipulator at some point. With a cold blade, the manipulator was killed. Yang Nanshi retreated in shock. Not good, Han Fei can control other people's souls. Han Fei grinned. Actually, I'm also very good at setting up arrays. As Han Fei spoke, another trapping array appeared. By the time the opponent's spirit gatherer realized this and wanted to break the array, it was already too late. Taking advantage of Yang Nanshi's strike, Han Fei also retreated. There were 2 people in the array, 2 soul warriors. Because the battle happened too fast, they hadn't found a suitable opportunity. As a result, an array was set up around them. When Han Fei came, the 2 of them had activated all their secret methods and were fighting bloodstained. However, Han Fei smiled. The law of gravity. The void lines appeared again. Han Fei was slightly surprised. One of them actually blocked it. It seemed that he was protected by a soul secret treasure. However, Han Fei didn't mind. He used the draw technique 3 times in a row and cut this person down. Han Fei said leisurely, of the 10 people, 5 are gone. I know that the 5 of you are the strongest. These 5 are just temporary, so I'll take them in first. At this moment, Han Fei pointed his finger, and the controlled hunter and soul warrior all rushed to the opponent's spirit gatherer. And he didn't stop and attacked. Han Fei said, Yang Nanshi, they all say that you are very strong, but I think you don't seem to have any special abilities except for your strength. Yang Nanshi was furious. This time, she had indeed acted rashly. Originally, when she got the news, she thought that since Han Fei was alone, she might have a chance. Besides, she had always wanted to fight Han Fei. Fearing that Han Fei would run away, she brought people here in a hurry. Who knew? Han Fei actually had so many tricks up his sleeves. In less than 5 breaths of time, 3 people had died, and the other 2 had actually become his puppets. Chapter 1094. Why did Han Fei expose the secret that he could control souls so decisively at this moment? It was because he understood a few things. After leaving the ideal palace, these memories would all be selectively forgotten. There was no need to worry about them being exposed in the outside world. The other, the 5th soul realm, was the last soul realm that most people could force their way through. Including Yang Nanshi, no one had ever reached the 6th soul realm. It could be seen that the 6th and 7th soul realms were not simple. Not just anyone could set foot in them. Since he wasn't afraid of being chased into the 6th soul realm, he might as well fully display the power of the void lines. At the very least, he would be able to kill a few more people and intimidate some people so that they would not dare to make a move. As long as Han Fei could get out of the ideal palace safely this time, he would definitely gain a lot from this trip. He and the others would definitely receive a rapid increase in strength. Not to mention anything else, a peak junior law enforcer was the most basic. At that time, the Thug Academy would completely enter the era of law enforcement. In the law enforcement realm, at least they had the power to protect themselves and could be truly fearless. Even if Yang Nanshi and the others went out, could they really crush the Thug Academy at that time? Not necessarily. Yang Nanshi transmitted, Xian Wufa, retreat from this battle and go back to look for the others. The others all have divine soul protection power, right? The person controlling the water transmitted, Nanshi, are you sure you still want to fight? Young Nanshi, fight. Must. The other members of the Thug Academy were not worth worrying about. Since he's alone, we can't let him go. Han Fei saw a male armorist take a deep look at Han Fei and fly away. Han Fei sneered. Ask an armorist to look for help. I thought you would ask that woman from the Yi family to go back and call for help. In Han Fei's eyes, the woman from the Yi family was 500 meters away on his left. The remaining spirit gatherer was holding 2 curved machetes in his hands. Obviously, he found that his attainments in array formations were not as good as Han Fei's, so he was ready to do it himself. As for the manipulator, if Han Fei was right, the manipulator should be stronger than the hunter of the Yi family, second only to Yang Nanshi. Just now, with a sweep of his million knife art, it seemed that the red flower was cut into pieces. However, at this moment, the surface of the sea was filled with red seeds. He did not know what these seeds were used for. However, he knew that it was definitely not a good thing. If necessary, he would deal with this manipulator first, even more so than Yang Nanshi. Han Fei grinned. Why? Do you think you can kill me with just 4 people? Clang! Yang Nanshi clasped her hammers together. Her face, which was supposed to be a lowly's, was now fiercely saying, of course I won't underestimate you. As long as I can stop you for 2 hours, you'll definitely die. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. Oh, really? By the way, Yang Nanshi, I can understand why the Chu sect wants to kill me. I can understand why the Sun family wants to kill me. However, why did your family spend so much effort to kill me? Does killing me mean anything to the Yang family? Yang Nanshi said, Humph, don't try to fool me. If you die, everything will be fine. Han Fei was not in a hurry. He said slowly, can't you just tell me why? If I die, the big families will be able to continue pressuring the Thug Academy and even snatch the star beads. However, do you think that with the intelligence of the Yang family, you'll be able to get a share of the star beads? Yang Nanshi's face changed drastically. Are you saying that I have no brain? Han Fei sneered. At least, I don't think you have one. Think about it, is the Yang family comparable to the Chu sect or the Chao family? Or the 7 major sects? At the very least, can you beat the Sun family, or are you richer than the Zhang family, or are you more cunning than the Mo family? Suddenly, a voice said, Nanshi, don't listen to his nonsense. He's just looking for an opportunity. Han Fei glanced at the sea. I don't know which family you are from. I'm guessing that with your flirtatious ways, you might be a member of the Mo family. Let's talk about the Mo family. What else does your family have? You can't fight, but you keep asking others to marry into your family. I'm afraid that the Mo family is about to wither, isn't it? Who can your family compare to? Although the Yang family is stupid, they can at least fight. What does your family have? Puff. 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 In the air, red and coquettish flowers bloomed. There were 5 flowers on a vine, and the flowers bloomed, revealing the sharp stamens and the big mouth in the center. Han Fei waved his hand, and the million knife art rolled up a storm. He stepped on the ground and the coiled turtle array appeared. Han Fei smiled contemptuously. What's wrong? Are you angry? Han Fei said, I haven't finished yet. And the Yi family, this is the most useless family. Except for speed, there's nothing else they can do. Except for speed, they can't do anything else. Even if I die, the star beads of the Thug Academy will be snatched by the big families. Do you think the Yi family can compete with the Chu sect with speed? Believe it or not, they can slap you to death. The hunter didn't speak, but Han Fei keenly saw that her dagger was slightly tilted, as if she was ready to attack at any time. Han Fei said, let's put it this way. The big families seem powerful, but in fact, they are just chasing something that even they are not sure about. Do you know why the Chu sect doesn't snatch the sea quelling painting? Do you know why the Chu sect is so focused on exploring the 1,000-star proving ground? You, including the 7 major sects, don't know anything. What's the difference between you and the iron-headed fish? Ah, I'll knock you to death. Yang Nanshi couldn't stand it anymore. With a roar, a huge old turtle as big as a mountain appeared. Han Fei screamed, "What? Did he just fly into a rage out of humiliation? Don't you know anything? You're used as a tool every day. It'd be strange if you could be successful. At least, the Chu sect knows what they want. And you only know how to find that path. You don't even know if that path exists, where it is, and what you will encounter after you go there. You just want to fight here. Hey, your turtle is so big. Don't you want to fuse with it? Mountain divine power." Yang Nanshi roared and angrily smashed down with the big copper hammer, and the 100-meter-long hammer's shadow smashed out raging flames. Han Fei sneered. Sure enough, she's a silly girl who only knows how to use brute force. Suddenly, Han Fei felt something was wrong. Gravity? Han Fei suddenly discovered that gravity had changed. Within a kilometer. No, within a further distance, the gravity suddenly skyrocketed dozens of times. Ha! Domain power? Do you think you can stop me with this? As Han Fei spoke, the hunters of the Yi family suddenly split into dozens of shadows and attacked him from the sky. In addition, 2 rotating machetes flickered and danced in the air like moons. While resisting the attacks of the hunters and soul warriors, the spirit gatherer shouted, "The spiritual energy fluctuations on his body are very fast. He is drawing an array." Han Fei bared his teeth. For some reason, he hated manipulators and spirit gatherers very much. In a battle, he could treat anyone as a retard, but he couldn't treat these 2 professions as retards. On the water surface, those seeds had begun to glow. The range covered by the seeds exceeded 5,000 meters and looked very much like some kind of domain power. Han Fei was indeed drawing an array. However, the method of this array was extremely strange. He was drawing it in his eyes, and all the spiritual energy condensed from his thoughts was gathered in his eyes. He was drawing a rather complicated large array, a large killing array. Dozens of times the gravity didn't affect Han Fei at all. With Han Fei's current strength, even if the gravity increased by 100 times, it would only reduce his speed by less than 20% at most, which was nothing to him. At this moment, where Han Fei was, there were mountains above, endless seeds below, and phantoms shuttled back and forth around him. As for the spirit gatherer, he could ignore them. What a bunch of fools. The million knife art suddenly disappeared, and the infinity water only turned into a drop. Han Fei's first priority was to stop the domain power of the manipulator at the bottom of the sea. At this time, the void lines wouldn't be of much use. Since the other party dared to stay, it meant that these people all had a way to stop the void lines. However, Han Fei didn't take back the void lines. At this moment, his void lines had already clasped the huge soil black tortoise. The infinity water quickly fell into the sea. Although the red flowers were blocking it, it was water after all, which could change at will. At this moment, it dispersed into mist and passed through the flowers. Almost at the same time as the infinity water fell into the sea, the seeds suddenly erupted with red laser-like rays, shooting straight into the void. This scene was very spectacular. Explode! Boom! Clank, clank, clank. The 13 clone phantoms of the Yi family hunter took action. However, Han Fei almost didn't move and only slightly trembled his body, avoiding most of the attacks. Of course, after being slashed a few times, the coiled turtle array was broken, and a few wounds appeared on Han Fei's body. It was not because of the strength of this hunter. It could really break Han Fei's defense, but because of the bone knife in his hand. The infinity water under him suddenly exploded. Above, with the recoil force, Han Fei had already launched the sacrificing punch. Dong golden ripples visible to the naked eye shook in the void. At that moment, Han Fei's face changed slightly. What a strong force. He had underestimated Yang Nanshi's power. This silly lowly, with the help of a secret method, was almost on par with him in terms of pure strength. This meant that Yang Nanshi's strength as a peak-level hidden fisher had reached the intensity of 15 waves. Besides, with the pressure of the soil black tortoise, Han Fei's strength was slightly inferior. Not only was Yang Nanshi extremely powerful, but the void lines also failed again. When the first void line clasped the soil black tortoise, the giant tortoise directly sank into Yang Nanshi's body. An earthy yellow light appeared on the latter's body. You want to control my spiritual beast? In your dreams. Don't release your contractual spiritual beasts. Yang Nanshi didn't succeed, but the threat on the sea was greatly reduced. Within 2,000 meters, all the seeds were directly crushed by the infinity water. The laser-like thing failed to wrap him. Looking at the white mark on his neck, Han Fei snorted coldly, and the golden giant appeared, blocking the Yi family hunter with the will of the god of war. Chapter 1095. When he saw those tiny red beams of light that looked like lasers, Han Fei suddenly felt that he had an inspiration. Fuck, why didn't I think of this before? In the ideal palace, since there was infinite spiritual energy, why couldn't he create some special things? The infinity water returned again, protecting his body. Han Fei reached out and grabbed in the air, and a strange-looking weapon appeared in his hand. This was a world with infinite ideas. The other party could use laser-like combat skills, but he couldn't. What appeared in Han Fei's hand was a thermal weapon similar to a Gatling gun. Han Fei felt that this might be the first most incredible weapon he had created in this world so far. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Han Fei grabbed with both hands, and spiritual energy swarmed into the weapon. Countless specks of light shot out in all directions. Yang Nanshi rushed up with a sledgehammer and was hit by hundreds of bright spots. Yang Nanshi was stunned. Han Fei was also stunned. Looking at the thermal weapon in his hand, he was a little speechless. It doesn't seem to be very powerful. For a body-refining powerhouse, this spiritual energy explosion didn't seem to be able to hurt him at all. The weapon in Han Fei's hand turned into a compressed spiritual energy cannon. However, before Han Fei could compress much spiritual energy, he saw that a large number of seeds had covered the sea again. And those laser-like red lines were bent like noodles at this moment, covering the sky and stretching towards Han Fei. In the blink of an eye, no compressed cannon was of any use. His own fists were still the most useful. Han Fei and Yang Nanshi were hammering each other. In terms of strength alone, neither of them could defeat the other. Originally, Yang Nanshi was a violent girl who often used her strength as an absolute advantage to defeat her opponents. Therefore, she didn't bother to practice any combat skills in the past. But at this moment, Yang Nanshi was also speechless. Is this Han Fei the same as me? Is his bloodline special? However, Han Fei's mind at this moment wasn't on Yang Nanshi at all. The million knife art swept towards those red lines. However, to Han Fei's surprise, the water blades actually passed through those red lines and couldn't cut them at all. A voice rippled. Humph. I told you, you are preparing, and so are we. Han Fei's heart sank. Do I have to use the Supreme Yin-Yang image again? At that moment, with the embroidery needle in hand, Han Fei completely gave up on the opponent's hunter. The Monkey King's 3,000 staff strike struck towards Yang Nanshi with all his might. Shwa shwa shwa. Clang, clang, clang. Han Fei flashed around Yang Nanshi crazily. The hunters of the Yi family flashed wildly around Han Fei. From the third person's perspective, a strange scene appeared here. Yang Nanshi was spinning in circles, Han Fei was everywhere, and Han Fei was surrounded by white marks. Explode! Since the infinity water couldn't cut off the red thread, Han Fei summoned it back. Relying on his strong physique, he detonated it right in front of him. Boom! For a moment, the three of them were sent flying. At this moment, they could clearly see that the hunter from the Yi family was coughing up large amounts of blood. Han Fei flew directly into those red threads. Blood oozed from the corner of Han Fei's mouth. I can even blow myself up when I'm determined. What can you do about it? As soon as he said that, he found that he was tied up by an extremely flexible silk. More importantly, these threads could not be severed. It was at this moment that Han Fei's array was ready. The 1000 current divine arrow array, a very niche array, came from the ocean book. Usually, this was not an arrow array that could be set up by one person because it required a huge amount of spiritual energy. Generally speaking, it would take more than half an hour for a single person to set up the array, even if there was sufficient spiritual energy. However, this kind of killing array was usually set up temporarily on the battlefield. How could it be given half an hour? Therefore, it was often set up by hundreds of people at the same time. When the array was set up, it was like a full blow of 1,000 strong masters, which was extremely lethal. As long as the spiritual energy was abundant, the arrow array would not stop. Under normal circumstances, this kind of array was used in large-scale wars to help defend one side. After setting up the array, at least 100 spirit gatherers were needed to set up a spirit gathering array to cooperate with this array. However, all the difficulties were not difficult in the ideal palace. All Han Fei needed was time to draw the array. The difficulty of the array was actually not high. It was just that it was difficult to complete it with the power of one person. Once there was a mistake, he would have to start over. Han Fei had devoted all his energy to setting up the array just now. If it were old Jiang here, it might only take him a few seconds to set it up. However, Han Fei couldn't. He was still a step too late. At this moment, spiritual light flashed in Han Fei's eyes, and an extremely complicated array hovered in the air. Swish! 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 Streams of light flashed out of the array and went straight to the 4 people on the field. However, at this moment, Han Fei was almost wrapped in red light like a dumpling. Under Han Fei's feet, a killing array also appeared. It was the spirit gatherer. The other party wasn't idle either. Clearly, the hunter and soul warrior that were being controlled weren't strong enough to stop him. The spirit gatherer set up the tidal sword array, and the sword shadows were trying to cut Han Fei. However, the sword array was not a bone sword. Thousands of sword shadows failed to cut Han Fei's body. Fuck, you're forcing me. Cancel the fusion, Supreme Yin-Yang Wheel. Han Fei knew the extraordinariness of the Supreme Yin-Yang Wheel. The reason why the 3 of them fused together before was that if he didn't fuse at that time, he might still be stabbed to death. But now, none of these 4 people were law enforcers. They couldn't kill him with one blow. Therefore, Han Fei didn't panic. Little Black and Little White could just use the Sun Yin-Yang Wheel. The Yin-Yang pattern appeared, swept around Han Fei, and all the red light was broken. Seeing this scene, the hunter who was rushing over was immediately enraged. What kind of power is this? The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up. Son of a bitch, you're really powerful. But, isn't it my turn next? Han Fei stepped on the ground, and the Great Plate Turtle Array appeared. With a thought in his mind, the arrow light scattered, among which, 300 arrow shadows shot straight at Yang Nanshi. Kill the manipulator. Han Fei grabbed the compressed spiritual energy cannon with one hand again. He had figured it out. Ordinary compressed spiritual energy was useless to throw at these people. Even if the infinity water exploded in front of them, it would be useless. After all, this was the infinity water he came up with, not the real infinity water. Since he was going to compress it, he had to create a spiritual energy explosion that even he felt was terrifying. Yang Nanshi saw something wrong. Han Fei was holding a strange box-like thing in his hand, and even Han Fei's arm was trembling slightly. Yang Nanshi shouted, Han Fei, in the ideal palace, no matter how hard you try, you won't be able to do anything. Go to hell. The giant hammer bombarded, and Han Fei's figure flashed out with a swish. All his strength was used to compress the spiritual energy cannon. At this moment, he was not in the mood to fight. At this moment, while only Yang Nanshi could block the 1000 flowing divine arrow array, he only needed to avoid her. And now, the most dangerous one was the manipulator. She had never seen something like the supreme yin-yang pattern. Spiritual plants were ineffective against it, poisons were ineffective against it, domains were ineffective against it, and the light and shadow lines were ineffective against it. Anyway, no power was effective against the supreme yin-yang pattern. Once this weird pattern approached, she even felt an inexplicable suppression. Puff! 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 The 1,000-flowing divine arrow array exploded. This was the manipulator's death substitution technique. However, just as she emerged from another place, a huge ball of spiritual energy appeared. Han Fei shouted, "Explode!" The manipulator reacted extremely quickly. She covered her body with spiritual plants and activated the death substitution technique. But suddenly, she found that she couldn't move, and the supreme yin-yang pattern was already hovering above her head. At that moment, she was startled. Taoist connotation. The woman was horrified. Impossible. Nanshi, help me. Young Nanshi was surprised. Is Moyu asking for help? How is it possible? Moyu was once a top heavenly talent ranked 5th among the top 10 heavenly talents. Very few people who fell into her light and shadow lines could escape, but now it was asking for help. When Yang Nanshi saw the supreme yin-yang pattern, she immediately gritted her teeth and was about to give up on Han Fei and smash it with her sledgehammer. Han Fei sneered. Do you think I can leave just like that? Won't I lose face? Swish. 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 All the sword streams that besieged the spirit gatherer and the hunter blasted at Yang Nanshi. No matter how strong Yang Nanshi was as a peak-level hidden fisher, she had to deal with them. That was equivalent to the blow of thousands of hidden fishers. Puff! Shrouded by the supreme yin-yang pattern, Moyu even found that even her death substitution technique was broken, which was an absolute suppression. At the last moment, Moyu shouted, Taoist connotation. Puff! Moyu died. When she shouted this sentence, the three of them, including Yang Nanshi, were all horrified. Their first thought was, how is this possible? How strong is Han Fei? He hasn't even comprehended his own laws. How can he have the power of Taoist connotation? However, Moyu, once a top master ranked 5th among the top 10 heavenly talents, died in front of them. How could they not be shocked? Han Fei, who was out of danger, summoned the supreme yin-yang pattern and the two rushed at the spirit gatherer. Shit! Although the spirit gatherer was a heavenly talent, his array and combat power were not as good as Han Fei's. The reason why he stayed was that he had the guardian soul to enforce the law, and Yang Nanshi and the other two were there. However, Han Fei didn't say a word and directly rushed at him. The 1,000 arrows blocked the road, and the controlled hunters and soul warriors entangled him, so that he had no time to run away and was directly killed. Moyu could resist for a while, but he didn't even have the power to resist. The road was blocked, the sun yin-yang pattern came, and so did Han Fei. As a spirit gatherer and a semi-skilled soul warrior, he only tried to resist with an array, but he couldn't resist for even a second and was directly killed. The situation changed in the blink of an eye, and Han Fei directly gave up on the Yi family. It was not that he didn't want to kill them, but that he couldn't. Besides, the hunter had already run away. With a twist of his figure, he appeared directly a kilometer away and ran away quickly. At this time, Han Fei chased after Yang Nanshi with the 1,000 arrows shadow and the supreme yin-yang pattern. Yang Nanshi couldn't stay calm anymore. The Taoist connotation has come out. How can I fight? Yang Nanshi turned around and ran. Han Fei shouted behind Yang Nanshi, Hey, silly lowly, I won't kill you. We can cooperate. Chapter 1096. I won't listen, you can't kill me. While running, Yang Nanshi tried to hit Han Fei with the Overlord Hammer to block Han Fei's surprise attack. In fact, Yang Nanshi was really panicking. What was the concept of Tao? As far as she was concerned, only explorers and above were qualified to pursue the path of Tao. Why were those below explorers called law enforcers? Because powerhouses at this stage could only grasp a wisp of law at most, and it was impossible for them to touch the Great Way. However, when Mou died, his terrified look didn't seem to be fake. This could only mean that Han Fei had some special opportunity to control a wisp of Tao in advance. Facing the law, Yang Nanshi was naturally not afraid. After all, no matter how strong a law was, it was just a wisp of power. However, Tao was a wisp of the Great Way. How could it be equated? Yang Nanshi didn't know that the supreme yin-yang image was actually not that strong. Chao Qiu could resist the yin-yang image, but how could he surpass Yang Nanshi's strength at this moment? Therefore, she could also resist it. However, Yang Nanshi didn't know the strength of the supreme yin-yang image, nor did she know that this kind of power actually couldn't last long. At least, when she was the only one left here, she didn't dare to fight. If she lost, she would lose her life. At least, the strength that Han Fei had shown so far was extremely strong. A total of 10 people came. Except for an armorist who went back to call for help, a hunter who ran away, and herself, all of them died, no one survived. Although Yang Nanshi had been clamoring for a fight with Han Fei before, however, in fact, it was just because she was not convinced. She believed that if it weren't for the fact that she hadn't passed the 6th soul realm, she wouldn't have been ranked 5th on the heavenly talent list. Yang Nanshi even thought that she could be tied with Jiang Nanyu for first place. However, this scene had truly horrified her. Fighting head-on with Han Fei, she didn't even dare to release her contractual spiritual beasts, for fear of being controlled. In terms of strength, Han Fei had indeed shown great strength. This was the first guy she had encountered in her life who could compete with her in strength at the same realm. Besides, although the 10 people who came this time were not all elites, Yang Nanshi believed that this force was more than enough to trap and kill 2 powerhouses on the heavenly talent list. However, when it came to Han Fei, they were almost wiped out in just half an hour. How could she not panic? The phantom glass wings were still faster than Yang Nanshi. Han Fei soon reached Yang Nanshi and deactivated the supreme yin-yang wheel. Han Fei said, "Yang Nanshi, I'm telling you the truth. No one from your family died in my hands. Why must I kill you? Everything I've said before is true. Even if your aristocratic families could kill me, your Yang family wouldn't be able to get a share. However, I can give you a share of the profits." Yang Nanshi swung her sledgehammer at Han Fei, only to be smashed by Han Fei with 3 punches. The two stood 1,000 meters apart. Yang Nanshi said, "Don't think that I'll believe you just because you took that black and white pattern. Stay 5,000 meters away from me before you talk." The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. It's possible. The Yang family's IQ is really low. Han Fei shrugged. As you wish. Actually, if I really wanted to kill you, I could just directly chase after you. Do you really think you can run away? Yang Nanshi snorted arrogantly. You can't kill me. Do you think I'm that lunatic Chu Kuangren? Although your black and white pattern is very powerful, if I don't care about the consequences and go all out, I can at least save my life. Han Fei retreated a little, spread his hands, and said, I won't do it. Let's talk. Yang Nanshi looked vigilant. On the one hand, she wanted to hear what Han Fei was going to say. On the other hand, she was waiting for someone. And Han Fei's purpose was actually very simple. Once he left the ideal palace, they would definitely still be enemies. However, in the ideal palace, if he could persuade the Yang family not to take action, or even develop them into unstable members, it would actually be of great benefit. Han Fei said, I know you are waiting for reinforcements. But it doesn't matter. I'll only say what I'm going to say next once. It's up to you whether you want to listen or not. I've analyzed it for you before. Even if all the star beads of the Thug Academy are handed over, your Yang family won't be able to get them. Yang Nanshi raised the sledgehammer. Why are you so sure? Han Fei sneered. The big families in the Thousand-Star City may all know the purpose of snatching star beads, which is to go to that place. Do you know where it is? Yang Nanshi replied, I don't know, but I know that there's a mysterious place outside the Thousand-Star City. Once you pass, you will be blessed with countless blessings. Han Fei scoffed. Bullshit. If you really knew what was going on over there, would the big families fight with me for the sea-quelling painting? Look at the Chu sect. Has anyone ever tried to snatch the sea-quelling painting? Yang Nanshi, so much nonsense, what do you want to say? Han Fei sneered. I want to tell you, whether it's the big families or the 7 major sects, in the end, only one family, no, to be precise, only one person could obtain the opportunity in that place. His goal is to become a king. Yang Nanshi's pupils shrank. You know the inside story? Han Fei said in disdain, do I need to know the inside story? If not to become a king, what do you think the aristocratic families do? Moreover, becoming a king was something that only Exalt Realm experts could accomplish. Does your Yang family have a venerable? Let me assume that your Yang family has a venerable level powerhouse hidden very deeply. But are they as strong as the Chu sect? They know that the opportunity is not in the sea-quelling painting, so they have been exploring the Thousand-Star Proving Ground. They have been preparing for this for thousands of years or even tens of thousands of years. How can a group of people who don't know anything compete with them? Yang Nanshi said in disbelief, my family leader can't be a fool. I don't know, but they definitely know. Han Fei sneered. I believe others. Your Yang family, do you think you're smart? You're just a bunch of guys with more brawn than brains. How can you compare with a family that has existed for thousands of years? However, if you listen to me, your Yang family may not be able to become kings, but at least your Yang family may not be destroyed. Yang Nanshi tilted her head and looked at Han Fei. Don't fool me. I'm very smart. Han Fei thought to himself, those who can say this are definitely not smart. How can you be smart? Han Fei grinned and said, of course I appreciate your intelligence. Otherwise, I would have told someone else long ago. It's just that they are too stupid, even more stupid than you. Seeing that Yang Nanshi's face softened a little, Han Fei couldn't help but laugh in his heart and continued to bluff. Think about it, what if your elders are also kept in the dark? What if the Chu sect succeeds and a venerable of the Chu sect becomes a king? Do you know what will happen to the Yang family? Yang Nanshi's pupils constricted. Go on. Han Fei said, let me ask you a question first. Think about it, if someone in your family becomes a king. But the other big families all have venerables who have the chance to become kings. What will you do? Yang Nanshi said fiercely, beat him up. Han Fei smiled and said, yes, that's the truth. Look, among the top 10 heavenly talents, if not including me, I think you can rank first. What do you think? Yang Nanshi said proudly, of course. If it weren't for the 6th soul realm, I would definitely rank first. I have an ancient bloodline, so of course I won't lose to anyone. Han Fei sneered in his heart. Is this Yang family the descendants of that giant? From top to bottom, their brains don't seem to be very developed. Han Fei immediately said, think about it. You are so talented that you must have the potential to become a king. Once the Chu sect succeeds, someone will really become a king. For a heavenly talent like you who has the potential to become a king, do you think you will be punished? Yang Nanshi choked and seemed to think for a long time. Let me tell you, we are still enemies. Don't fool me. Han Fei laughed. Of course. Of course we are enemies, and I also have the potential to become a king. In the future, there will definitely be a battle between you and me. But, Yang Nanshi, you have to think about it. Don't be used by others without knowing it. If there is really a chance to become a king, no one will give it to the Yang family, not even me. So, not only am I your enemy, but all the big families who came here today are your enemies. You are just temporarily joining forces to kill me, an enemy who has the potential to become a king. If I die, won't you be the next one to be killed? Yang Nanshi trembled all over. Han Fei's eyes lit up. That's all I have to say. At this moment, someone will definitely come to help. I have to go. Yang Nanshi, there is a reason why no one in the Thousand-Star City has been able to become a king for 10,000 years. The big families always set their eyes on those who have the potential to become a king. I have the potential, so they all come to kill me. Do you think they will let you go for the sake of the Yang family? With that, Han Fei flew away with a swish. For Han Fei, Yang Nanshi was really impossible to be killed. Even with the supreme yin-yang wheel and his powerful array, he could at most seriously injure her. After all, these were all imaginary, and the power shown just now was indeed much weaker. Perhaps the enemy's reinforcements would arrive while they were fighting. Instead of that, he might as well let her go and fool her. Anyway, the people of the Yang family were relatively stupid and easy to fool. He really couldn't fool her. If the other party didn't listen to him, he didn't need such an opponent. But once he succeeded and planted a seed in the other party's heart, would the other party really work hard again? Han Fei released his perception and rushed all the way in the direction of the so-called giant city. Half an hour later, a large group of nearly 50 people were rushing across the surface of the sea. Coincidentally, they bumped into Yang Nanshi, who was returning. The leader was none other than Chu Qingyan. The hunter of the Yi family who had just escaped was also among them. Seeing Yang Nanshi alone, Chu Qingyan's face immediately sank. Nanshi, where is Han Fei? Yang Nanshi glanced at Chu Qingyan strangely and said, he ran away. Chu Qingyan's face turned ugly. Damn! Where did he go? Yang Nanshi shrugged. How would I know? You guys are too slow. And Yi Kai, you ran so fast. Didn't you take me with you? Immediately, 5 or 6 people surrounded Yang Nanshi. Miss, are you okay? Yang Nanshi snorted and waved her hand. I almost died. Let's go back to the city. Chapter 1097. Han Fei could avoid these people. With the range of his senses, it wasn't difficult for him to discover others in advance and avoid danger. Along the way, in addition to finding Chu Qingyan and the others passing by with a group of people, Han Fei found at least 3 more groups of people passing by. However, those people were all rushing to various places, and the other party was in a hurry as if they were doing some mission just like him. Han Fei didn't look for trouble. If they didn't come to find him, he didn't need to take the initiative to find trouble. About half an hour later, Han Fei found that the number of creatures in the sea had increased. Just like the periphery of the Scattered Stars Island, there were battles between humans and marine creatures. However, the level of these battles was not very high, and most of them were hanging fishers. Although the fighting was very intense, such a war was actually a kind of training for the soldiers. The strong would only watch from the sidelines to prevent accidents and generally wouldn't take action. With a thought, Han Fei had turned into a stranger's appearance. However, when Han Fei landed, he scanned with his perception and found that several people were staring at him. And in Han Fei's perception, at least a dozen people disappeared into the crowd. About 50 kilometers away, Han Fei saw the shadow of a giant city. Han Fei thought to himself, this is much better than when I saw the heavenly desolate city. When he was in the heavenly desolate city, it was really miserable. In the end, even dangling fishers joined the battle. The hanging fishers were not weak. It could be seen that all the strong people died in the war. Because the strength of Han Fei's soul had reached a very high level. At this moment, it was very easy for him to see 100 kilometers away. Therefore, Han Fei saw the 4 big words, City of Justice, written on the city wall from a long distance. Han Fei murmured, City of Justice? I've never heard of it. This name is too weird. Even if you are really the embodiment of justice, you don't have to give it such a name, do you? Besides, can you guarantee that the people in the city are all fucking good people and none of them do evil? That's not realistic. However, this is not the point. Let's go in first. Han Fei knew that he had the breath of a living person on him, so he would definitely be discovered as soon as he came. If the aristocratic families had already sealed off the fifth soul realm, and he was a new face, he would naturally be discovered. Not only would he be discovered, but so would Luo Xiaobai and the others. Now, he only encountered Yang Nanshi and a few others. He didn't know if Luo Xiaobai and the others had gathered together. Han Fei's appearance attracted many people's attention. However, these people were all ordinary hidden fishers, and only one of them had reached the peak level. Because they didn't know Han Fei, they just bowed and didn't talk to each other. Below the city. Han Fei crossed the city gate and was not stopped. In fact, there was no one guarding the door. Perhaps, this city had really reached the level of not picking up any loose ends on the road and had become the embodiment of justice. However, it was true that in a world of cultivators, whether or not there were guards was the same. After all, cultivators could sense with a thought. Why would they need guards? Also, this place was too close to the coastline. It was so close that once something big happened, someone would notice it immediately. The city of justice was also divided into an outer city and an inner city. Wasn't it similar to the Tianhuang city back then? However, at this moment, a large expanse of empty land was exposed in the outer city. Many people were cultivating and sharpening their combat skills. Bam, bam. Clang, 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 fight as hard as you can. You have to carve the fighting spirit into your bones. Han Fei saw that not far away, there was a group of teenagers who were peak-level dangling fishers fighting. That was a real battle. They fought until they were drenched in blood and their skin was torn open. On another training ground, two perfect combinations were fighting against each other. Knives and swords flashed, shields and vines rolled, and they were fighting fiercely. And between them, a hanging fisher with 7 or 8 scars on his face was watching the battle. From time to time, he would yell harshly. At the edge of the training ground, there were spirit gatherers guarding. Obviously, after the battle, they would heal these teenagers. Han Fei couldn't help but feel a little touched. If there were only 1 or 2 places like this, it wouldn't be a big deal. But within his range of perception, there were as many as 100 such training battlefields. Because the nearest training ground was too close to Han Fei. Therefore, when the hanging fisher drill master saw Han Fei, his eyes lit up. Because under normal circumstances, there were not many strong masters passing through the outer city. Everyone was very busy, and the strong masters in the city always had a lot of things to do, so they usually flew directly from the sky. In this time of war, efficiency was above everything else. Therefore, when this person saw Han Fei, he hurriedly ran over. "Sir, can you come with me?" Han Fei paused for a moment. "What's the matter?" The man said with an ugly face, "Sir, I have a few children who have reached a bottleneck. I wonder if you can exert some pressure on them. Can you help them once? I don't dare to waste too much of your time. I'll be fine in a moment." Han Fei thought, so that's why. He immediately smiled and said, "Of course, these are the pillars of our human race." Seeing Han Fei coming, the drill master immediately said to the spirit gatherer, "Everyone, stop fighting and heal your wounds quickly." Not far away, the spirit gatherer was about to stop, but he heard Han Fei say, "No, I'll do it." Han Fei knew that a peak-level hanging fisher had limited spiritual energy. And he had unlimited spiritual energy, so his healing speed was much faster. Just when the scar-faced drill master was puzzled, he saw Han Fei waved his hand and a series of divine healing techniques fell on them. In the shocked eyes of the spirit gatherer, he saw that the children covered with wounds were recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. Because they were not seriously injured, the injuries of these teenagers were all healed within 3 seconds. This efficiency was simply amazing. The scar-faced drill master was stunned. "Lord! Law enforcer!" Han Fei didn't explain but just smiled. "Everyone, come over, within 100 meters of me." The group of teenagers was already stunned. They had seen law enforcers before, and they could even see them often. The outer city was only separated from the outside world by a wall, and they were often pulled out to watch the battle. However, they had rarely seen such a powerful and fast healing technique. Therefore, this didn't prevent these teenagers from looking at Han Fei admiringly. Han Fei sighed slightly in his heart. Anyway, it wouldn't take long, so it was good to give them some hope. When those teenagers gathered, Han Fei's face turned slightly cold. Suddenly, within a radius of 100 meters, everyone trembled. It was a strong killing intent, full of the smell of blood. Even the scar-faced drill master next to Han Fei was trembling. How many creatures did he kill to cultivate such a terrifying killing intent? Even the drill master was shocked, not to mention those teenagers. Almost half of the teenagers stepped back, not even daring to look at Han Fei. Han Fei shouted, "Don't step back." That feeling was like a small boat floating on a turbulent sea. If they were not careful, they would be knocked over by the waves. Many of these teenagers, at this moment, had blood dripping from the corners of their mouths. They were bracing themselves to resist this strong killing intent. Han Fei said solemnly, "You will eventually go to the battlefield and fight the enemy bravely. The battlefield is filled with man-eating behemoths. Your companions are dying and your homes are being destroyed. You have no choice. The road is in front of you, so you have to kill. You have to use the knives in your hands to kill your way out of this world. You carry hope." At this moment, many people looked over from all directions. It would be a pity not to see this magnificent scene of a breakthrough. Many people heard what Han Fei said, and they clenched their fists. They bore the weight of hope. Just a single sentence from him was enough to stir their hearts. Under the pressure and the stimulation of the words, a teenager's eyes turned red. Kill. Kacha. The barrier had been broken, and a new hanging fissure was born. Successively, in just over 10 minutes, 5 people successfully broke the barrier. Han Fei felt the strength of the remaining people and withdrew his killing intent. In an instant, all the teenagers fell to the ground. Han Fei looked at the scar-faced drill master who was already sweating profusely beside him and said, "Those who should have broken through, but the rest are still a little bit behind." The scar-faced drill master said solemnly, "Thank you, Lord Law Enforcer. You are right. The road is in front of us, so we have to kill. I hope you will follow City Lord Shiman and use the Avenger as your partner to kill your way out of this world." City Lord Shiman? The Avenger? Han Fei nodded slightly, suddenly pointed to the high city wall, and said in a low voice, "I want to ask you, why is this city called the City of Justice?" Everyone was taken aback by this question. Is there a need to ask? However, the scar-faced drill master reacted quickly. This must be a lesson that the law enforcer wanted to teach everyone. The scar-faced drill master shouted sternly, "Are you all mute? My lord is asking a question." Many people also pricked up their ears to listen. Is there a need to ask a question? Is there any deeper meaning? A teenager who had just broken through quickly got up and said respectfully, "My lord." The name of the City of Justice was written by City Lord Shiman Linghan himself. The City Lord of the West City was once wronged and set out to sea, determined to take revenge, sailed the Avenger, and crossed the sea. After thousands of hardships, he became a venerable. He upholds the righteousness of the human world, slaughters all the injustices in the world, selflessly contributes all kinds of cultivation methods and combat skills, so that thousands of human beings can rise. As a human being, we should have a heart of justice. Han Fei's eyelids twitched slightly. Good heavens, a venerable level powerhouse. That's a bit awesome. Listening to this, the name of this city did make sense. In fact, after hearing the information he wanted to hear, Han Fei immediately said leisurely, "This is your understanding of justice, which is too narrow. Let me tell you, what is justice?" In the outside world, the Sea Clan invaded and wanted to destroy the human race. However, the heavenly Tao is heartless and treats all things as fish. The great chaos is coming, and the end of the world has come. If the heavenly Tao wants the human race to be destroyed, the human race will rise against the heavenly Tao, let alone the Sea clan. As long as people live, the continuation of the race, and the longevity of tens of thousands of years, is the justice between heaven and earth. If it is not our race, no matter what it is, we will have an unyielding heart and never bow our heads. There is nothing in the world that can destroy the human race. Even heaven and earth can't, let alone the Sea clan. Do you understand my righteousness? Hearing Han Fei's words, the people within dozens of kilometers fell silent. Someone's heart trembled. What kind of mentality is this? Someone murmured, there is nothing that can destroy the human race, not even heaven and earth. Someone's heart was burning. This is the unparalleled mentality, this is the pride of a strong master. Someone growled, the human race will not be destroyed. The human race will not be destroyed. Han Fei turned around and roared to the inner city. He seemed to be moving slowly, but he was actually moving fast. Countless youths looked at that back view and felt incomparably lonely. They knew that there were often strong masters dying. They must be carrying more things on their shoulders. Someone burst into tears and roared, what are you waiting for? Train, train. Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter.